Good morning. It is, wow, echo there. Good morning. It's February 24th, Tuesday. I'm Jim Check. With me, Ian Burns, out there in our nation's capital. I am in the central Okanagan in the beautiful city of Kelowna, and the sun is shining here. We got lots on the really big show. We'll kick it off with the headlines, though. Jeneroux to join Carney on latest junket. Is that the payday? Kris Sims actually going to be joining us here from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation around 10:30. And stop being stupid. America's not the enemy. Media focuses on conservatives while leaving the real mud alone. Champagne says budget will pass. By all measures, Canada's falling and failing its citizens. Dollar at a crossroads. Why has China staked Canada as a prime target? Is order returning to Mexico? More money for Ukraine on the 4th anniversary. Pointing fingers on the Tumbler Ridge tragedy. Fraud, waste, abuse, incompetence. We got a lot for you today, and you can decide which one it is. Food inflation, the real causes. We got lots on that. Liberal words are hollow as military still being disrespected. Another Arrive scam in the making. Despite evidence on health effects, profits come first. U.S. moves to improve health of children's food. Housing in Canada, where most of the wealth is stored, seems to be a complete mess. Immigration policy is worse than you can even imagine. Rally to take place in Quebec on gun grab. BC government spends mega dollars on spin. Trump to speak to the nation tonight. And government-funded media being exposed more and more. All that and a lot more on the really big show. Thank you for joining us. Yesterday, record numbers for us. We went over 1,000, which was super impressive. So hoping we can do something like that today. We got a guest on today. We got lots going on. We got some, we'll share some feedback with you before we get going though. Somebody said our production quality is great. We've been working on our production quality. Ian's got a brand new light there in the studio in his office there in Ottawa. And then we got some other feedback to share with you as well. And more people discovering the really big show. We're the best undiscovered news commentary station in Canada. Get ready with your emojis if you're a member of Thinking Canadians. And if you're not a member, consider joining Thinking Canadians. You get a bunch of perks, and we did one special members video on Friday, and we'll do one every Friday. And you ready to go, Ian? More than ready, right?
Writing with my Kelowna Now pen.
There you go. We're going to kick it off with this video here where the USA is not our enemy. We say this all the time. The USA we rely heavily on the USA. Let's listen in on this, though.
Look, the U.S. is not the enemy. We share the longest border in the world with the most powerful country to have ever existed in the world. The reason why we have a healthcare system is because we haven't had to pay for the defense, because the U.S. gave us the protection that allowed us to invest in healthcare and education. We have existed under the protection of the United States and benefited from the biggest economy in the world for decades. And then as soon as Donald Trump comes up and says something that ruffles our feathers, all of a sudden they're the enemy. It's naive. It is actually quite stupid. And what we're seeing right now is the conservatives of Canada trying to take that narrative from the liberals rather than standing up and being courageous and saying, wait a second, the US isn't the enemy. Trump is not the enemy. They're our friends. We need to work with them. If somebody says something that's insulting, we can get over it because we need to think about our long-term effects on our society. And making the US the enemy does not help our economy or our citizens at all. And in the end, we're just going to lose if we fight that battle. So I'm asking conservatives to step up and take the narrative back from the liberals, which is making Trump the enemy, and make bad policy, bad governments, bureaucracy, debt, socialism the enemy, and help Canada move into the next 20 to 30 years in a strong position.
He must watch the show a lot because we've been saying that for quite a while. It's absolutely great.
Well, he might watch the show, but it doesn't sound like he reads history books. Because if you read Canadian political history, probably the first thing that you will learn is if you want to win an election, demonize the United States. It's been done so many times. So pursuing that strategy, it might be principled, it might make sense, but you would be guaranteed to lose the election if you did that.
Well, I mean, that's how Carney won the election, by driving fear into the minds of Canadians. But
it's been done so many times, starting with Canada's first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald. He went all in on anti-Americanism. It's honestly, read the political campaigns. It's done again and again and again and again. Even Mulrooney was beaten for it. I'm sure people can remember that. The people who are old enough. You can't hope to win elections in this country by saying that America's a great guy and we're good friends with the United States. I mean, behind the scenes you can do that kind of thing, but you can't fight an election like that.
Well, until people smarten up and actually recognize, we say it on the show all the time, that we rest comfortably every night, just what he said, rest comfortably every night under the protection of the American military, the greatest military that's ever been on this planet as well. Every single night. And then here's Godsod. We put him up quite a few times, and he echoed what we said yesterday. I'm a Canadian, but I loved his patriotism. This is... Jack Hughes there. I mean, he's been put everywhere, Jack Hughes. He's been vilified now as well by some people on the left for being very patriotic. But he'll be at the White House tonight, too. We're going to talk about that later. He'll be at the White House tonight with the men's hockey team to listen in on Donald Trump's State of the Union. And you know
what? He's got saying that he's Jewish. Why has he got that there? But also, like, a very interesting Jewish role model, like smashing stereotypes there, I think. Quite interesting.
And then for the people that are being told not to go to the United States, not to like the Americans, not to buy American, just a quick reminder that Justin Trudeau, his girlfriend is from America, and he goes there a lot, and his wife and Carney's wife and kids live there.
I mean, yeah, obviously. Like what I said earlier about if you want to win an election in Canada, fight it. Make sure you're on the anti-American side. If America's a topic in the election, make sure you're on the anti side. That obviously doesn't apply to your personal life, because in your personal life, you're well aware of all of the advantages of having a good relationship with the United States. Not just for Canada, but for you as an individual, to get your kids into Harvard. Make sure you get beautiful returns on your assets, all those Canadian dollars that you can invest on Wall Street, and nice places to go for holidays, of course. Get yourself a little condo in Florida. They all do this. Obviously, fundamentally, this is one gigantic hypocrisy, and it has been all along, and that includes John A. Macdonald, the mighty John A. Macdonald. It's all opportunism. The prejudice is not necessarily with these politicians, I'm sorry to say, but it's with a chunk of the electorate, and it's them to whom they appeal. In their own, this is an excellent example, because in their own lives, they don't believe a word of this. They live in an American world, and they're very happy to.
But the first guy there, he does make a point, though, that the Conservatives don't seem to have position. Like, they kind of are borrowing the Liberal position and not standing out from it and actually getting hurt on it. So, I mean, what is...
Yeah. No,
maybe try telling Canadians the truth where you actually stand, and maybe the truth will actually set you free. Heard that somewhere before. The truth shall set you free.
This is one of the criticisms that we've made of Pierre Poilievre in the past. And this is a funny thing to say, and anybody that hates Pierre Poilievre is going to hate hearing this, but whatever, I think it's true. He's almost too principled for his own good. He actually does believe in things. He actually has a set of principles that he's tried to translate into the political realm. And because of that, he's reluctant to just flip on a dime and go full anti-American, even though that might have been to his advantage in the election, might even be to his advantage now. He's reluctant to do that because he doesn't believe that. I mean, a cynic would then say, his voters, his party doesn't believe that, so he's trying to keep his job. Maybe, but, he's not even trying to drag them in that direction. He's, I think he's governed very much by what he believes in. And he's been attacked for a lot of things. If you think about his time as leader, he's been attacked for quite a few things. Where he's like the CBC, defund the CBC. That's obviously his principles. He wants to actually implement his principles. Whereas Mark Carney, you might have believed that Mark Carney's principles were in the appropriately named book Values that he wrote, or somebody wrote for him. But he was happy, because he wanted to win an election, he wanted to stay in power. He was happy to just burn that book and start again, and just say, what would you like, ladies and gentlemen? I'll arrange my principles according to what you want. And now he's the undisputed master of Canadian politics. So there's a lesson there.
Remember that story of Mudd? You know how that name Mudd, Dr. Samuel Mudd, back in the assassination of Abraham Lincoln, where he's the doctor that treated the John Wilkes Booth, and then he ended up in prison. And then the name Mudd became synonymous with people that have done really bad things. And then there's also the Casey at Bat, the old Muddsville story, a sad day in Muddsville. Is Matt Jeneroux the new Mudd? And has he done this to his family and his children for going forward? Because it looks like payday just showed up for Matt Mudd Jeneroux. I mean, we did a poll. You can go look at a poll. We did a poll here. This is our first poll we've done on our Now Media here. If you go to post, if we can just show it. And not looking good for people that are thinking he did the right thing. I think it was 99% of people said that he should face a by-election. And we've said that on the show here. Like, if you really wanted to move to the Liberal Party, call a by-election and face the electorate and see if the electorate wants that. But he's silenced. He chose to silence 30,000 votes himself. And here he goes. Let's listen in to Vasi Kapellas tell us where he's going.
Welcome back to Power Play. A little news for you at the end of our show before we go tonight. The Prime Minister is set in a few days to head off on a trip to Australia and India and Japan. We are learning this evening, though he was not in Parliament this afternoon, that newly minted Liberal MP Matt Jeneroux, who crossed the floor from the Conservatives over to the Liberals, will head on some of that trip, at least, with the Prime Minister. So he will accompany the PM on at least part of that trip. I'm going to leave Power Play there. Thanks for watching.
So I put that link in there. If you could put that up, there's our poll that we did. Our first poll. You can go and actually put your vote in there if you want as well. 99%, and there's 1.4, like 1,400 votes on there. 99% says that he should face a by-election. Keep going down. Up. There, it's in the middle there. There you go. So if you go to posts on our tab, you can find it and you can put your thoughts in there on what Matt Jeneroux should do. Matt Mudd.
But unlike a poll in Leger or Nanos or whatever, it's not gonna become formal policy, is it? Unfortunately for the Liberal Party, it's just a peasant poll. It's not one of those real polls.
Right. This is just one for people, and not the one that you've basically make sure you slickly word the questions so you get the term you want. But where's the media on this? Where's the media asking the questions, the government-funded media that gets access? Where are they asking the questions? What about the 30,000 voices that Matt Jeneroux and Mark Carney decided to silence? But instead, they go after the Conservatives. Listen to this here.
Floor crosser now, that you keep losing MPs from your caucus?
Well, it would be a great question to the Liberals as to what the newest member of their Liberal team has done with the promises he made Canadians. He told his constituents and he told Canadian taxpayers that he was going to, not take a paycheck and donate that to charity. Has he done that? Why has he been absent? Why are the Liberals comfortable with accepting someone like that into their caucus? So I'd encourage you to ask them.
With all due respect, he was absent when he was still a Conservative MP. So I'm trying to understand.
Well, at the time, he made a commitment that he would be donating his salary to Canadians at that time. That's my understanding. But
he may not have done that.
Well, I mean, I think it'd be a question for the Liberal caucus. I would just say this: that when any candidate that ran in the last election, promising Canadians to fight inflationary deficits, promising to get big projects built and support our energy sector, especially coming from a place like Edmonton and Alberta. Anyone who won the support of their voters with that kind of message has to explain why they no longer support the things that they ran under. I know that when I was going campaigning for conservative causes, both in Saskatchewan and around the country, we had a great deal of.
Why do they choose to go after the Conservatives instead of asking the obvious question, which is the biggest question when Matt Jeneroux ran in a Conservative stronghold, and then he chose to change that? Why aren't they asking the questions of Jeneroux? Or why you decided yourself to change 30,000 votes? Did you ask the people?
He was talking about deficit. Even more kind of on the nose is he was obviously a Conservative Party member, Conservative Party candidate, MP, etc. He was fully signed up to a platform that wanted to defund the CBC, for example. So and he's left that party and joined a party that absolutely loves the CBC. That's just one example. It's a bit of a sort of cultural flashpoint, isn't it? But there's an enormous divide between the two parties on that question, and there are quite a few other questions, obviously, on like the likes of environmental regulations. Poilievre and the Conservatives wanted to get rid of all that stuff. Now, so he's been elected in Edmonton, no less, on that platform, and then he's jumped over to another party that has basically the exact opposite policies. You know, the deficit that Andrew Scheer mentioned there, that's almost a bit too vague, isn't it? I think the betrayal is more poignant and obvious and blatant when you talk about things like that. Because there really was a difference between the two parties. Often there isn't. Times like that, when you've got two centrist parties who are basically the same, if you have somebody defect in those circumstances, it's kind of like, you know, it's harder to you know, attack the person that does it. You still can, obviously, but it's harder to do it. But in this case, in this election, you had two very different parties with very, very different visions of Canada. And particularly as related to Alberta, the province in which he is an MP. So, yeah, more of that. But what a shame that it's left to Andrew Scheer, you know, the softly spoken Andrew Scheer, to talk about that rather than the media. Instead, you have the media interrogating, almost bullying Andrew Scheer, who is kind of bullyable, God bless him. You've got the media sort of harassing him there. It's the exact wrong way around, isn't it? And it's, how many times have we seen this?
It's absolutely deplorable. Like, I mean, democracy is at threat because of the CBC. They not only are they obviously biased, they act as a shield. Because why aren't they not going after Matt Jeneroux? They get to fly on the plane with Carney when they go on these junkets here. So are they going to ask questions? They're on the same plane. They're on the plane there, so they will have access to Jeneroux. They've had access to they have access to all of them. Nobody's asking the questions. Nobody's asking the questions on the Freedom Convoy still. Still, not one question asked. Still, no questions on the sealing of the vaccine files for 15 years. It's just absolutely crazy. And this media here attacks the Conservatives. It's like it's their fault that Jeneroux crossed over. When it comes down to the voter is the most important person in Canadian democracy. It is the most important person. It's not Carney, it's not Poilievre, it's not Scheer. The voter is the most important person. They take all that power away because of these things like this. And the media, who's supposed to be the watchdog of power, instead of holding them to account, actually empowers them. Thank you for, here come the comments for the contribution
comments
and the sausage rolls. Thank you.
I would say as well, by the way, I check every day, or every time we talk about Matt Jeneroux, I go on his social media, which is the main avenue nowadays for the main medium for politicians to communicate with people. Go on his Facebook. All he's got is that, you know, what is it, like seven paragraphs? The statement where he explains that he's defecting. And then go on to his X account,
Blocked.
which he had locked. Let's see if it's still locked.
Still blocked, yeah.
Yeah. So, where is he? Where is this guy? And why you can't even see his posts, by the way. This is like, he has that silver badge that you get on X, which is only for political accounts. What's the point of being a political account and having that badge and everything and all those protections and privileges if you're just going to hide every single one of your tweets? We can't even read his previous tweets. And part of the reason for that is probably because he's deleting them, because he'll have written tweets where he attacks the Liberal Party and Mark Carney. And that's usually what comes out, isn't it? And that's what came out with one of the previous defectors, just like looking at these old tweets where they've attacked the Liberals and then saying, like, what changed? Matt Jeneroux, on the other hand, too clever for that, or too lacking in principle for that. He's just blocked his entire Twitter account. How is this serving his constituents? But I refer back, I said something quite old-fashioned and something that probably rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way the other day, where I said he's not acting like a man. And I'm just going to say that again. That's not how a man acts. And I know, I'm very well aware it's a controversial thing to say these days. But there's something about being a man where you stand in front of the gunfire, especially if it's your fault and it's your responsibility. You stand there and you explain yourself. That is manning up. That's being a man, in my mind anyway. And he's not doing that. He's hiding away. It's very, it's dishonorable behavior. And I'm quite shocked. And every time I check this, my heart sinks every time I check his Twitter account, and it's still locked. Because that's, that's not just his personal drama. This is Canadian democracy, as we like to talk about. This is the whole system on trial, and it's appalling.
And this is even more important because this one seat could flip the balance for the Liberals, so it'll have no accountability because the media is compromised. So this is why independent media like ourselves is so important in Canada, because we can see what the CBC does, we can see what CTV does, we can see what Global does. They carry the water because they're going after Scheer instead of going after Jeneroux, who broke the trust of the basic foundations of democracy here in Canada. Canada has become Mudsville. Look at the financial things. There is no joy in Mudsville tonight because Matt Mud Jeneroux has decided to toss democracy out the window. And then he took his payday. Now he's going on a junket with Carney. And what's the pattern here? Who crossed the floor earlier there? Michael Ma. And then who joined him in China and sat at his side? They're in China. It's just absolutely crazy. And then, I said, if there's a question, if I was out there, I would be asking some of the other Liberal MPs, well, how does this look? All of a sudden, these two floor crossers getting better treatment and trips and all these things. And then some of the people like Stephen Guilbeault not getting what he wants. What is really going on? And then it's over 100,000 votes there between the three seats now that Mark Carney, Michael Ma, d'Entremont, and Jeneroux have decided that democracy does not matter in Canada. Especially this seat, a conservative stronghold. Absolutely atrocious.
And in Alberta, of all places, it's it's not just some random Ontario seat.
And you've seen some...
where they often flip, don't they? This is Alberta. This is a big, very sensitive...
they went into the heart... They went into the heart of the Conservatives and just basically reached their hand in and just ripped it out. And then the media, I saw some of the stories where they're saying, oh, look, even in Alberta, Mark Carney is winning over the Conservatives. Wow.
That's what Rosemary Bond said before she said, I just made it up.
Yeah, wild. And here's...
It's really dreadful. And I just want to add something to that comment about the man thing, because I know some people are going to be very upset about that. But this is just my perspective as how I grew up, and I have a son, how I'm going to teach my son to behave. There are still certain, areas where you can talk about things like that, I think. And I just remember when I was a young lad, 10 or something like that, I had been picking on a girl. I don't know what I was doing, name calling or something, or throwing something at her. And I remember my dad even though I was so reluctant. I can't express how reluctant. My dad made me walk all the way across the village to her house and knock on her door. And he stood at the gate and he pushed me forward, and I had to go up to the door and say to her mother and the child that I was sorry and that I wouldn't do that again. You know, and most people, or most, I don't know if this is just a man thing, I'm just speaking of my own experience, but I feel like most men have had a similar story where it's like, own up, like face the music. You did something wrong, or you did something that's upset people. Go and explain yourself. Go and stand there and do the thing that makes you feel sick that you don't want to do, but do it anyway, because that's what it is to be responsible. And I can't get over this. And I think I'm gonna keep mentioning it. I'm gonna keep banging this drum that he hasn't done the thing that almost certainly he would have been encouraged to do as a kid. We all learn this, don't we? That you face the music. That's why that's a cliche. You're supposed to stand up and explain yourself. But where is this man? And yeah, the press. Where are the press on this? They should be hounding him.
And I rigged outcomes as I stopped voting because of that. But that's sorry, but that's not what we have to do. We have to vote. We have to vote in better people. Look at the government is full of fools. It's full of fools, and they're reaching into your pocket every day. They're reaching into your pocket every day. And the media that's supposed to hold them to account is used as the shield. This is the most important thing. That's why outlets like ourselves and other independent media like Sam Cooper and that are so important today. So important that we must break through. We must break through. We must, if you can help get this out to more and more people, we must expose the hypocrisy and the waste, fraud, abuse. And that's the only way to break through, is shine a light on it. The truth shall set you free. We must expose the truth. Here's, speaking of truths, here's the Liberal finance minister on the budget that has to pass tomorrow.
Conservative decided to add a bit more. Listen, this is minority parliament. What matters is that we get the budget moving, and that's what we'll do.
Are you expecting that it will pass tomorrow?
Well, it's not me. Canadians expect that because there's a lot of measures that Canadians need. I mean, this is a special time in our nation history, and I want everyone to understand that, you know, we've put every effort to pass the budget as quickly as possible. We obviously need the opposition, and that's why we made some compromise in the national interest, I would say.
Good to hear our old friend. Looking very stylish, looking very Parisian.
The dollar is at a crossroads here. If we don't get a CUSMA deal, the Canadian dollar is facing a big risk. And the only reason the dollar's been holding up is because the Americans, if you go to the next slide, the Americans have a weak dollar policy going right now. And that is, Trump has done that. And so, but if we don't get a deal, and this is some of the economists in Canada have said, if we don't get a deal on CUSMA, our dollar could go south of 70 cents. It could go south of 70 cents. You want to talk about inflation? A lot of the stuff we import, and most everything in the world is priced in US dollars. So if our dollar weakens, that's just an automatic inflationary pressure in Canada. Automatic. You buy less, things cost more. And the only reason, like I said, that it hasn't fallen already is because of the policy that the Trump administration has put out there. They want a weak dollar policy. I mean, Canada has had a weak dollar policy for years and years and years. And only, I think, back time, it's Harper let the dollar float above $1.10. We were actually over. I think it was 2008, 9. I think that was during the financial crisis there. Canadian dollar went to $1.10 US. And it hasn't been like that for a long time. But I mean, we are an export country, and we actually artificially depress our dollar. China does the same thing, and that's been some of the complaints of the United States too, is many currencies depress their currencies so that they can have an advantage, because especially if you're an export nation, you want to depress your dollar so that you can pay your workers cheaper, and you can sell your products for more money. You pay in Canadian dollars and sell in American dollars. And that's why, like, I mean, the monopolies and oligopolies and all these lobby groups in Canada have the ear. I mean, have the ear of the politicians. These are not citizen-friendly policies. These hurt the average worker, but benefit the corporations massively.
Right.
And then there was a I'm not going to play this clip, but there was a guest on CBC and basically said, by all measures, Canada is failing, is falling and failing Canadians. I mean, they can't even find a measure that they could say, oh, Canada, because, you know, like Francois Philippe Champagne will stand up there all the time and tell you how Canada is like the best, second best in the G7, this, that, the strongest economy. I talked to my mother, I did all these things. But the people that are going to the grocery store know the difference. The elites, sure, they're doing well. I mean, they're getting, and the MPs are getting a raise on April 1st. They're not doing so badly. And the new ones that got hired are all getting salaries in the 500,000 plus range. So they're doing pretty good, plus bonuses, plus expenses. How many trips has Mark Carney been on so far this year? And what have we got to show for it? Other than a bunch of MOUs and guest books signed. And now
a massive bill, catering.
And Matt Jeneroux now going on this trip. Again, shouldn't the media be saying, like, holy cow, is this actually the pay? Like, is this the exchange here? Jeneroux now brought under the wing and is now the sidekick of Carney there. You get a little payment here, you're going to go on a trip. Is it worth it, Matt Jeneroux? Is it worth it?
You get to sit at the big table, don't you? You get to sit at the special table with all the big people. That's basically what it is. It's like one of the perks. It's proximity, really, isn't it? Which is what, if you know anything about medieval courts or even ancient courts, people always want to be as close as they possibly can be to the king or the queen. They want to be as close as they can get. So it is like a privilege. It's like he's been made into the chamberlain or something, the master of the toilet. I would say though, this CBC thing, it's worth watching. It's only, what was it, 90 seconds? Yeah. It's worth watching because the CBC guy makes the point where it's like, you know, people are talking about GDP per capita, but it's not all about GDP per capita, is it? Which has kind of been, with that story that came out of the Globe and Mail, which isn't really an exclusive or anything like that, but that story about Canada's GDP per capita sinking below Alabama's. The defense from a lot of liberal apologists has been, GDP per capita, like that doesn't mean much. And then talking about other things like universal healthcare and whatnot. And then this guy responded just saying, yeah, actually GDP per capita is like, it's a rough measure. It's a rough proxy for quality of life. It's not perfect. And then he went on to list like lots of other things, including the Human Development Index.
Gone from like third to like 16th, and just like all these measures, we're falling off a cliff, literally falling off a cliff.
Show. I felt like when I was watching, I was like, watch this show, mate. We've had every graph there is, and it all goes downhill about the year 2015. It's in every department, or uphill if it's a bad thing.
So if you go to our website, reallybigshow.ca, I'm going to put it in here. If you go there, we're going to put a letter on there so you can send it to your MPs and demand that they come on here and be held accountable. And you can start flooding them with that. And it includes the Liberals, the NDP, and all that. It's not on there yet, but we're going to put it on there. If you want to make a contribution, though, to independent media, you can do it there, too. And that way, YouTube doesn't take a cut, but we're okay with YouTube. YouTube has been good to us. So, and also, there you can find we're on Rumble now. We're streaming on Rumble. We're on X. We got a new account on X. And we're also, our Kelowna Now account is what we were using, but we started just one for this show, Now Media News. And we have a TikTok account as well, so you can find us all over the place. And we're trying to get this out to more and more people. And we're trying to get an interview for every show. We have Kris Sims that's going to join from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. He's going to join us at 10:30 today. And I think we have John Carpe tomorrow. We have a bunch lined up already. And we're going to start putting them in the post so you can see when we're going to get these guests on. But here, just as a reminder, we showed you this one yesterday. Actually, no, we're going to play another clip here from Andrew Scheer here. Oh, we're making a mess here. You got it or not?
Down in the States, and how do you think it's going to affect the CUSMA deal?
Well, Mark Carney promised Canadians. He didn't just make a promise when he said this. He made it the signature campaign promise of his campaign that he knew how to get tariffs removed. He promised Canadians that he would have a deal by the end of July, and we're almost a year into his mandate, and he has failed to get a deal. That was the signature campaign promise that he made, and Canadians are rightly concerned at his inability to do what he said he would.
Trump went back on plenty of deals he signed with the UK, basically everyone he signed a deal with over the last year, and hit them with a tariff anyway. So where does that leave Canada in trying to negotiate with someone who doesn't really care about what his own Supreme Court says or past deals he signed even in the last year?
Mark Carney didn't say he'd give it the old college try during the campaign. He didn't say that he could only get a deal if Donald Trump did certain things. He promised Canadians. He made it the signature central plank of his campaign that he knew.
Notice that the reporters there are just being apologists again for the Liberals. Just being apologists for the Liberals.
Well, I mean, they're being called out for being apologists, and I think that's very fair and accurate, certainly. And it's not just this. He says it was a central plank of his campaign. It was a double-planked campaign, if anything. If we're talking about central planks, there were two of sort of equal prominence. One was, I'll sort this out with America, don't worry about it. The other one was, we're going to build at speeds we didn't even think were possible. We're gonna go past warp 9 on this one, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are a year later. What exactly has happened? That was the other promise. What was the no trade barriers by Canada Day? Gee, I think that was a while ago, wasn't it? Last time I checked, there are still trade barriers between provinces. It's the whole package, really. Those are just the two central planks, but it's the whole package. There were many planks promised, and yet we don't have them. But Carney, nonetheless, has not been made to walk the plank, has he? He's still captain of this vessel.
I see we have a Liberal bot in here telling us all the good things that are done. So just as a reminder, though, the first time home buyers thing credit not done, hasn't received royal assent. So. And impoverishing your nation, and then handing out crumbs, bread and circuses, a Roman trick, nothing to be proud of. Nothing to be proud of. Impoverishing a nation and then handing out breadcrumbs and then asking for a pat on the back. We have 12 million people in record numbers lined up at the food bank. Why don't we be serious for like a second here? And if you're just going to spam in there, then you could just go on a break as well too. So. Because those are not true things. And here's something to burn into your retina. This one right here. Canada's middle class, richest in the world since in 2014.
Well, this person that you're talking about there also commented earlier, saying Canada's been has one of the highest qualities of life in the world since 2015, which is true. That is accurate. However, that's not the point that we're making. It's not the point that anybody's making. There's nobody saying Canada is not one of the best countries in the world for quality of life. Nobody's saying that. What they're saying is it used to be orders of magnitude better. And it's not now. It's worse. It's worse since 2015. And coincidentally, 2015 is when the current governing party assumed power and implemented lots of very controversial policies. The two, some argue, are connected. That's the point. The point isn't, Canada's it's worse than Chad here. Nobody's saying that. Canada is still a first world country that people, by and large, enjoy living in. But it's a lot worse in quality of life terms than it was 11 years ago. That's the point.
Food inflation caused by manufacturing. I don't want to spend too much time on this. It ignores the fact on the carbon tax, industrial carbon tax, the food packaging tax, the clean fuel regulations tax, the interprovincial tariffs and borders, the supply management, all those things. Again, it's just being responsible and owning up to it. You've had the wheel for 10 years, 11 years, and it's an absolute disaster. Look at all the charts, an absolute disaster. And it's just too much. Too much. And here's Doug Ford, their pretend conservative. Here's Flip-Flop Ford here. On American television, on CNN, of course, they love to put him on there. And here's Flip-Flop Ford at it here.
And there's going to be the midterms. I've never seen so many Canadians all cheering on the Democrats. And I think there's 33 Senate seats up for grabs. 20 of them are Republican. But we saw what happened in Congress. We saw what happened in the Supreme Court. The walls are closing in, I believe, on President Trump right now, and he's feeling the pressure. So a lot of these jobs are border states that are being affected, and he needs those seats. So if it continues on, people are gonna be unemployed, and which will affect the midterms. And
that's good. Doug, no, don't put that up yet. Back up. There you go. A little clunky this morning. Flip-Flop Forward on CNN with the Wolf Blitzer there, with the Wolf himself. And Doug Ford.
I can't think, we talk about nominative determinism, where your name determines your personality to some extent. I can't think of an animal that he is less like than a wolf or a blitzer. Like he's nothing like that. He should be called like squirrel blitzer or something. But I was wondering, where does Doug Ford and his team, why do they keep that US flag? I presume they put it in a safe somewhere, because you don't want to be seen with a US flag, do you, when you're Captain Canada?
No. Flip-Flop Forward, and this is from Sam Cooper, a really good independent journalist here in Canada. So the difference between bargaining hard for Canadians using these circumstances to maintain personal political power and the top three exploiters, I think I would have to agree with them wholeheartedly. And I would put them in a different order. They're Carney, Ford, and EB. Well, maybe EB. I don't know. Definitely the top three in Canada. And you can put Wab Kinew in there as well, although he doesn't really matter much in the grand scheme of things. But I would say Carney and Ford, because they are, Ontario still is one of the bigger economies in Canada here.
I think Wab Kinew is a cut above David Eby, frankly. And I think Ford is as well. Just getting that out there. Old Wab. I think Wab, he's got a future in federal politics, inevitably. And maybe also Dougie Ford. But Carney, in terms of who's pushed this the hardest, or who's won the most, yeah, Carney is definitely number one there. Although Doug was the pioneer. Doug Ford was the trailblazer, because he won that election handily, and he did it with one policy, which was, F Trump.
And again, it's so important for us to get a CUSMA deal, yet Ford and Carney seem to be doing everything they can to destroy it. And it seems like Ford and Carney are doing everything they can to destroy the auto sector in Canada as well, because they're still pushing these EV mandates. We listened to Melanie Joly again yesterday explain why we're going to build the best cars in the world, and the world's going there, and we're going to export these cars all around the world. And here's another one. Lamborghini says, we're not going to do it. I mean, nobody buys Lamborghinis anyway, but many of the auto manufacturers have reined back. Ford have discontinued the F-150 Lightning. Like, they're going to make hybrids. That's where they make money. They don't make money making EVs. Only one company in the world, say this over and over again, Tesla, is the only company, including the Chinese automakers, that makes money selling EVs. Yet, Melanie Joly doesn't even know Tesla exists, is going to create one or bring in the Chinese automakers, and Doug Ford seems more than willing to allow the auto sector in Ontario to collapse. 500,000 jobs. What are those people thinking every morning when they get up? How long does my job last here? Because Doug Ford and Mark Carney and Melanie Joly get up on stage there and act performative, and a bunch of people can clap because they got TDS syndrome. America is not the enemy. We are our own worst enemy. All these things are happening long before Donald Trump won the election. We can pull up the charts. It's not like it was like this and it fell off in the day that Donald Trump won the election. It's been a steady decline over the past 11 years.
I also just want to say, about a Lamborghini. You said nobody buys Lamborghinis. Yeah, like statistically, it's a very rarely purchased car. But I would just say, like, this story is about them cancelling their first all-electric vehicle. Now, why is it that people buy a Lamborghini? I mean, yeah, it looks all right. Looks pretty handsome, doesn't it? But one of the reasons, I would say it has to be top 2 reasons you buy a Lamborghini. So you can go to a stop sign or a red light and rev the bloody engine because it makes a gloriously loud sound that announces itself. You know, have you not been to downtown Toronto, Vancouver, or something like that, where they do it and it echoes off the buildings? They rev their sports car. It's part of the reason these people buy these cars in the first place, because it's about attracting attention to yourself. And they get to say, look at me, listen to this amazing engine that I'm like blasting out at 8,000 revs or whatever at a red light. You can't do that in an EV, obviously. So I feel like that was maybe not the wisest business decision from our Italian friends in the first place.
People buy the Lamborghini for the badge on the hood there. That's why they buy the Lamborghini. Badge on the hood.
The noise, the engine is important. I maintain that.
Although
and you're not going to get that with like the sound of an EV, like the sort of ghost sound, like that's not going to do it. You want to hear that like massive engine.
Sorry to bash your balloon, but companies like Porsche are actually putting in fake sounds into their EVs.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, that doesn't do it, does it? Fake sounds. That's not acceptable.
Hilarious. That's what it is.
You want the engine. You want, like, come on. Everybody knows that.
This is from Sam Cooper. And we talked about this already. I think it was a week and a half ago we talked about this. Experts warn Canada is China's prototype. This is from committee hearing. Is Canada's prototype for democratic infiltration. How many times have we seen story after story after story of China interfering in our election? Even with Mark Carney, they asked him, why does it seem like the Chinese are trying to help you win the election? I don't know. Let's move on. And the media moved on. Like they don't want to look into it. They want Mark Carney to win the election. They've helped liberal candidates. And Mark Carney has had business dealings with President Xi. He literally borrowed money from President Xi in the Bank of China when he was at Brookfield just last year. Over $250 million to help out refinance real estate that's in trouble in China. And why would the Chinese pick Canada? One, it's really easy because it's like weakness. We showed you that thing from Prince Edward Island yesterday. It's very easy. And also, the data suggests it's become a critical platform in that effort, not despite its closeness to the United States, but because of it. Don't forget, China jockeys for #1 position, and its competitor is the United States of America. So if it can make bases and different things and infiltrate Canadian democracy, it has a really good, strong foothold next door to its neighbor. Because one of the things that the Americans have, the geography, which makes them a superpower that's very hard to challenge. They're protected by 2 vast oceans. Canada gives China a foothold against that strength that the Americans have.
Well, it's also a little bit ironic, isn't it? Because Canada's usually chosen as a trial market by companies, not just American companies, but companies around the world for their product or whatever it may be. Canada's quite famous for that, and it's because obviously ease of access, which is what the CCP are finding as well with interference. Easy to get in there, no real barriers. But also Canadians are regarded in the sort of business world as being like, they're not ideological, they're not like nationalistic or whatever. There aren't any kind of cultural barriers to trying a product like you might get in parts of Asia or Africa or whatever. So they select it as a market, it's almost like the closest thing to like a neutral market, so they can see how their product performs in neutral circumstances. And it's rather interesting that the Chinese Communist Party's United Front Work Department is apparently of a similar mind. They're also trying out their product, which is Chinese infiltration and Chinese hegemony at the expense of the United States. Apparently, we're all in there as well, aren't we? If those polls are anything to go by, we think that the United States is a bigger risk than China.
Absolutely.
So
crazy.
they're pushing against an open door here.
Well, again, the media helping out there as well. And again, why doesn't the media ask the questions for these obvious conflicts of interest? People like Sam Cooper are, people like us are. Go read this article from Sam Cooper. Independent journalism is where you have to turn your attention because you're not getting answers from the government crippled and corrupted media. They have exposed themselves more and more every day. And with Rosie Barton the other day, it's like, oh, it's all made up. And then that cackle tells you everything you need to know. Everything you need to know.
It was a word, really, isn't it?
Our own reporter there, Steve McNall, reached out to somebody. I think Steve's actually in Mexico right now as well. But we got a story here from a Kelowna woman here that was sheltering in place in Puerto Vallarta. Things have seemed to have calmed down. This is, you can go on Kelowna now, you can read this. Brenda Bachman says, you can go read the story there. She thinks that it's calmed down there in Puerto Vallarta, and then there's flights have been resuming now. And I have some friends that are actually going to Cancun, and I'm just like, why? You know, they think, well, I paid for the ticket, I'm going. And flights have resumed. Things seem to have calmed down there and there's a picture that we can put up. Some of these pictures were being shared. Yeah, so that's some of the stuff that was going on after they killed the leader of Jalisco, the new generation cartel, El Mencho. Things got pretty wild. But Cabinet yesterday ruled out any repatriation flights for Canadians in Mexico. And that was from Anita Nan. Urged vacationers just to follow curfews. And well, actually, we'll play the clip here from Anita Anand here.
President Sheinbaum has the situation under control?
I am concerned with the safety and security of Canadians first and foremost. In answer to your question, in my conversation with Foreign Minister de la Fuente last evening, he indicated that the situation should stabilize in the coming days and that this was a targeted operation which will not continue.
This seems to have been triggered by this, Minister. This seems to have, all this violence has been triggered by the security operation. Given the number of Canadians that were there, were you given any warning that this security operation was going to take place?
I was not provided with any indication that this particular operation would be taking place. And on my understanding, I believe that the Government of Canada was not provided with indication that it was going to occur.
Because Canada doesn't matter, right?
But also, doesn't she look like she's across the facts, as they say in the business? She's got it all. She knows everything. She really knows her brief.
It was funny how some of the liberal media in the U.S. and that were trying to blame this on Trump as well. Just everything. It's like Doug Ford and David Eby. Blame Trump. Wasn't it a South Park episode? Blame Canada or something like that? Blame somebody else. It's always about somebody else. And I think we talked about this yesterday. There's about 20, according to what the registered Canadians with the embassy, and not everybody registers when they go to vacation in Mexico. The number they had for registered Canadians was 26,000. But
that was sorry, you go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say there was a very funny. We're not going to be able to get it because it was on the radio, but there was a very funny interview on CBC Radio 1 in Ottawa, which I assume went out nationally, where they were speaking to people in Mexico, like Canadians in Mexico who were sheltering in place and having quite a long chat. And it was all going so well for the CBC, and they were talking about Anita Anand. It's like, you know, have you been following Anita Anand's statements? They're like, yes. And then they said something about I can't remember what it was, but it was something very relevant about gunfire or something that had happened that they needed to know. And they said, oh yeah, and then obviously this has happened. And then the reporter said, how did you hear about that? I haven't heard anything about that. And they said, oh, we heard about it on X. I just thought that was so funny. The CBC just having to like, they must have been like, no, you're not supposed to go there. But obviously that's what you would do. I for all these people that say, no, I'm going on Blue Sky, like I'm never going to go on X. If the proverbial poo-poo, if it hits the fan, you're in real trouble. You're barricaded in a hotel somewhere in Mexico and there's like a state of emergency. The first bloody place you're going to go is X, isn't it? To try and find out. That's where all the videos are going to be posted, all the pictures. If any news breaks, that's where it's going to break. That's where they're going to tell you.
And then it's the 4th anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine today. Actually, we're going to have Dennis Storchuk in. I've interviewed him many times. Dennis Storchuk is going to come in today, and actually he's bringing an interview that he did with a young man that is off to Ukraine to join the military there. So he's got a young man interview here that I think it's at 1:30, I believe, or is it 1:30? Dennis Storchuk will be on, and I've interviewed him many times, and I've interviewed people right from Kiev as well. So you know, you want to probably like step into that. But here's Mark Carney doling out more money. Listen to this.
So we're tightening that lifeblood from the Russian economy, along with our allies. Also, additional financial sanctions, a lowering of the oil price cap in coordination with the EU and the United Kingdom. In addition, $2 billion of additional aid, military aid for Ukraine over the course of the next year. We're announcing that today. The Minister of National Defense will give details. And in addition to that, something Ukraine needs, which is 400 armored vehicles. We'll be supplying those in kind. I would note as well, I didn't mention this in French, but we are the 3rd largest contributor to the Pearl air defense system that is coordinated by NATO. So Canada stands with Ukraine. The Coalition of the Willing stands with Ukraine. We're in it for the long haul. Russia is failing. The sooner they come to the table and actually participate in peace negotiations, the better it will be. And
that's in addition to the $2.5 billion that was just a couple months ago.
Yeah, it's over 25 billion now, I believe, isn't it? The total.
And Chrystia Freeland, the former finance minister and transportation minister and deputy minister, is now over there as their economic advisor, and she's going to manage all those bags of cash with how much oversight? Zero.
But what was that yesterday? That amazing quote. It was Chrystia Freeland, wasn't it? Where it was like, "How can we take you serious? Like, how can we trust that you're going to do it? That honestly or whatever." And her answer was, "We're the Liberal Party." So I guess that's the answer. We're the Liberals. If you're curious, if you're in any way sort of skeptical, it's the Liberal Party. Bear in mind. Anyway, I'm just looking at Mark Carney's statement here, and he says, yeah, this is him. This is from the horse's mouth. After Russia's 2014 invasion of Crimea, blah, 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 Canada has committed over $25.5 billion in assistance. That's the number straight out of the government. But something I would point out anyway, he talked about oil there. Talking about the price cap on oil. The 2 biggest developments in this war, like away from the battlefield, sort of macro developments, let's say, are, in my view, in the view of quite a lot of people I follow who are experts on this war, are America putting massive amounts of pressure on India to stop buying Russian oil, which was funding the war, helping to fund the war, and the Americans commandeering ships and telling Europeans to commandeer ships that are transporting Russian oil, the so-called shadow fleet. Those are the 2 biggest developments, because they threaten to actually really harm Russia's cash flow, which would make it very hard for them to prosecute a war. What I haven't heard anybody say, any serious people, any experts on this war, what I haven't heard them say is, it's great that Canada's chucked another $2 billion or whatever it is here and there. The idea that Canada's at the forefront here. I mean, probably Canada's role is very important to help the Ukrainian society survive this. But in terms of actually trying to end the war, Canada's role is minuscule, isn't it? It doesn't even seem to be a priority. The priority seems to just be to help the Ukrainians get through it, rather than actually stop the thing that's causing this misery.
Meanwhile, more young men go into the meat grinder every day. And I've met some of them, actually did interviews with them. And we're going to see another one today that are going into this meat grinder. They're convinced that they need to give up their lives for this, what seems like a forever war now. And in the same time, the Europeans are literally buying Russian oil. And Canada has too as well, like laundered Russian oil. We're literally
and the biggest supporter is the Chinese Communist Party, who are our good friends now, who we don't say, the Liberal Party won't say a bad word about them.
Literally, we're funding the war against Ukraine by supporting the Chinese, by buying laundered Russian oil, and not even putting our oil into the market. So that when the Germans were here begging for LNG, we said there was no business case. You can't even make this stuff up. And yet they stand there and they send your tax dollars away. I don't know, like at some point, do we have any money left? Or, well, we obviously don't. We're just running deficit after deficit. Like, here's another $2 billion. Well, that's $4.5 billion, because he promised, it was 2 months ago, just before Christmas there, when Chrystia Freeland was resigning. He promised $2.5 billion when Zelensky stopped in there, I think it was New Brunswick, just on a flyover. $2.5 billion there. And then now on this 4th anniversary, another $2 billion. So that's $4.5 billion added to the budget. That wasn't in the budget. Meanwhile, the Canadian military, guess what? We're going to give them some of our equipment. We don't even have any equipment. They said if we had to give up any of the equipment, like our equipment is in disrepair. What are we giving them? Doesn't even make any sense.
Well, like we've said a lot of times, they're way more sophisticated than Canada in a military sense. Not just more powerful. That's obvious. I mean, more sophisticated. Like, they have better technology. So, if anything, we should be asking them for their drone technology. And like, how do you actually fight a war in the 2020s? Not many countries on this planet know how to fight a war now. And Ukraine is, they're near the top of the list. But we're going to give them, like, things from the 90s or 80s. I mean, if you're lucky, from the 90s.
Some more news out of Tumbler Ridge there. The older brother of the Tumbler Ridge shooter has been arrested, according to the RCMP. And that's Jacob Van Rootselaar on a Canada-wide warrant for attempted murder. He's 22 years old, and for an incident allegedly involving an edged weapon in 2024 in Fort Mac. It said he was arrested in Sylvan Lake, Alberta. After he was charged, he was released from custody and originally approved to be living in Dawson Creek, but was later changed to Tumbler Ridge, according to police. Yeah.
It's terrible, isn't it? I mean, that's all of the...
And then Jesse Van Rootselaar.
I'm aware of, because obviously he killed his younger brother, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then this is the older brother.
And then David Eby has asserted that it looks like OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT, could have prevented the Tumbler Ridge massacre, adding that he is angry about that. The BC's premier remarks come after it was revealed by journalists in the United States that a ChatGPT account belonging to the alleged murder had been banned by OpenAI, but the company chose not to inform the RCMP. Federal AI Minister Evan Solomon said on Monday he had summoned representatives from the firm to Ottawa to explain their actions, adding that all options are on the table when asked about potential new regulations. That's their favorite word. Meanwhile, the BC's opposition AI critic, said this is a really important policy conversation that has to be had around how we can balance individual freedom, open information, and personal privacy. But, David Eby has a lot to answer for. And now he's looking for a scapegoat for this, because he has lots to answer for on decriminalization, that failed experiment that the Liberals and the NDP did here in British Columbia, with and even the Liberals with legalizing weed here, and it's led to mass psychosis for many youth, and I've talked to some of the doctors, for youth age 15 to 30. It is a thing that nobody wants to talk about. But maybe we're going to see if we can get somebody in to actually want to talk about it. Elton John also said it was one of the biggest mistakes. But decriminalization, the amount of times that the RCMP visited this residence, the access to guns, the social system, all kinds of things that Davey Eby, the policies of the NDP and the Liberals have to answer for. Yet they found something that had a closed account. What were they supposed to, you know what I mean? Like, it was a closed account. So,
But also, as Gavin Dew says, and I'm not just saying this because he comes on now and then for an interview, I'm saying it purely based on what he said. He said something, I think, quite wise and very important, where he's saying we need to look at how we can balance individual freedom and, you know, with the need to make sure that we prevent tragedies like this. Those are his words. Indeed. I mean, that's the core of this, isn't it? Because, like we were saying yesterday, I think it was yesterday, wasn't it? Like, people confide in these AIs in ways that they wouldn't even confide in their therapist, you know, or whatever, or their husband or wife or their closest friend. It's almost like it's as close as you can get to accessing somebody's thoughts, isn't it? That's one way of putting it. And, you know, anyone with a developed inner life, let's say, anybody who sort of cultivates their inner monologue and thinks things through, they know that sometimes thoughts are quite strange, aren't they? Like, they can be expressed weirdly, and, you know, sometimes even you think about things that you don't want to think about. It's very, very complex, isn't it, the human mind? And it seems a little bit worrying that the Liberals and the NDP seem to want to attack this without any sort of nuance, without any concern about privacy, and just basically access people's minds and then bring them in if they're thinking about things that that might be a bit weird. But we also don't know what was this teenage psychopath actually, what was actually being said to ChatGPT. You know, I've heard some vague stuff about there was no planning, but there was an interest in school shootings. You know, lots of people are interested in school shootings. It's a really strange phenomenon that has been going on for the last sort of 50 years or 40 years or so. You know, it's reasonable to expect that somebody might be studying that or just interested in it. Like, why do people shoot up schools? Or something like suicide. If somebody's like interested in the phenomenon of suicide, are they going to get called in? Are they going to suddenly get a phone call from the RCMP? Just sort of saying, like, I'm not sure about this latest ChatGPT inquiry, sir. You've got to be so careful with this. And as you pointed out, the obvious, I mean, almost needn't say it, but the obvious thing here is that they're trying to distract from their own failures. Because this boy was on, if these Reddit posts are accurate, he was on all kinds of drugs, lots and lots of drugs, both prescription and things like mushrooms, and obviously cannabis. And not only that, but had quite serious mental health problems, apparently, and was visited by the RCMP. And yet his guns were allowed to stay. And, you know, there's so many questions here that are much more straightforward, just about basic governance, that aren't being addressed by David Eby, but instead a multi-billion-dollar American tech firm. I mean, now that's a juicy target, isn't it? And there we go. He can't resist because it's too succulent, isn't it? It's too attractive a target, and it could potentially absolve him of the blame that's would rightfully be at his door.
That's what they're looking for, the NDP and the Liberals. They're looking for a scapegoat, and that's all they ever do. They straw man. I mean, Eby I think he's the number one in Canada for straw manning anybody. Like, he'll straw man anybody. Danielle Smith, Trump, whoever is in closest proximity. Diana, thank you for the contribution to independent media. We appreciate that very much.
Diana. She's very good. Yeah, very, very big fan. We appreciate that.
You want some failure? Here you go. The National Research Council last year, this is where the fraud, waste, and abuse, you can start using your emojis if you're thinking Canadian. The National Research Council last year wrote down more than 12 million subsidies to now insolvent companies. Taxpayer-backed bankrupts range from Alberta Shrimp Hatchery to a brewery and PEI. Subsidies under the Industrial Research Assistance Program are intended to support research, development, adoption, innovation. Just no idea too stupid to be funded by the Liberal government of Canada. Write-downs last year totaled $12 million. Taxpayers lost $776,000 on a Montreal AI developer, Nuvola, $418,000 on a Vancouver vending machine operator called UpMeals, $234,000 on Sigma Analytical Systems, a Toronto biotech lab, $165,000 for Hook Motion, a Montreal startup that sold real-time data analysis for casinos, $65,000 on Hera fruit tree producer in Upper Canada, $63,000 for a Calgary shrimp hatchery, and $45,000 for a Charlottetown microbrewery. Where do we sign up? Like we've got a legit thing here. We got actually people that like our show. Where do we sign up for this cash money? Oh, right. They don't like our type of media. Our media doesn't fit the narrative. Maybe we should be going all pro-liberal, and maybe we can just get some of these grants that they're doling out.
It is certainly the way to get ahead, isn't it?
Just money, money, money. Food prices. Food prices have exploded in Canada, and we even shocked the food professor. He thought the inflation was going to come in this high sixes, and he's going to come on our show. I think it's in the first part of March there. The food professor will be on our show. But inflation hit 7.3. Let's listen in to this Conservative MP here.
It's 7.3%, rising more than twice as fast as other goods. This is not an imported problem. 70% of the food Canadians consume is produced domestically, including 80% of processed foods. Yet nearly 90% of agribusinesses now say the future of Canadian ag is at risk. So why are food prices rising? Punishing regulations, inflationary spending, and Liberal taxes continue to force Canadians to pay more at the store. How expensive does food have to get before the Liberals stop strangling farmers and get serious about bringing back affordable food?
We're getting very serious. It's called ensuring food security for Canadians. I'm happy to share that with the member. He may want to explain that to his constituent. The great thing, Mr. Speaker, with the Canada Groceries and Essential Benefit, we're helping Canadians, 12 million Canadians. But in addition, and I'm sure he's going to call his constituent, we're putting $500 million to help to have a more resilient supply chain, Mr. Speaker. We need to grow more food in Canada. We need to have a better supply chain. We need to focus on food security. That's exactly what we're doing, and I hope that the Conservative will vote in favor of the bill, Mr. Speaker, because this is helping farmers.
Mr. Speaker, under this Prime Minister...
That's good. That's good. Like, it's just painful. What did you call that yesterday when you get your chin up really high? What was that called? The Liberal arrogance? Francois Philippe Champagne there.
Hauteur. That would be a good word, wouldn't it?
Hauteur.
That's actually French as well, so it works perfectly.
Helping 12 million Canadians that you pushed into the poverty with your policies over the past 11 years. And now you threw some crumbs out there and you're bragging about it. That's the thing. Like, I mean, literally bragging about pushing Canadians into record numbers in food bank lineups. And then you're sprinkling crumbs, which is going to add more to it because it's just going to be more debt, more servicing of debt. Again, I watched this morning, Scotiabank, record profits, up in almost every category, The top 10 companies in Canada, banks are the most of them. They are the parasites of the economy. They are not the contributors of the economy. They're the parasites of the economy. They're the rent seekers. They take from the Canadians. That's what Canada's economy is left with. And they're bragging about it. And then here's a new CFIB report reveals that Canadian farmers' food supply under threat. Here, listen to this MP here talk.
The honourable member for Foothills.
The Liberals are shutting down agricultural research, and now their red tape is literally choking the life out of agri-food businesses. A survey said 90% of agri-food business owners believe that Liberal policies are putting the future of Canadian agriculture at risk. Red tape and regulations have already increased Canadian food inflation to 7.3%, by far more than double the rate in the United States. Experts are clear. Red tape, inflationary spending, the industrial carbon tax are increasing the cost of food production. How expensive do groceries have to get before the Liberals stop strangling Canadian farmers?
The honourable member, the Honourable Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the government of Canada, we're going to continue to invest in our farmers and ranchers right across this country.
That's good.
We'll continue.
There's just non-answers. I mean, just just non-answers. Like red tape, bureaucracy is literally crippling Canada. Literally crippling Canada. You can't get anything done. People are going to the US. We showed you the food professor a couple days ago. The same company launched his product in 4 weeks in the United States in 40 states. And what was it, like years he was doing it here and he couldn't get through the bureaucracy and the paperwork.
I would also say, you know, you can talk about these regulations. You can have a debate about them, whether they're good or bad. But ultimately, what I would say is that they are a luxury. And I think this is the lesson that the European Union is finally learning. And you're starting to hear some of this out of the German Chancellor in particular. These like crazy in-depth regulations, they are a luxury. That's what you do when everything else works. Everyone's prosperous and comfortable and cozy, you know, like the Europeans in the 90s and the early 2000s, where it's like, oh, we figured it all out. Cold War's ended. We're absolutely wadded. Time is, this is a great time. Like life's great. So let's make everything perfect now. And let's put in like infinity regulations to make sure that everything is great and perfect forever. That's the time to do it anyway. If you're going to do it ever, that's the time to do it. The time not to do it is when, as we've pointed out, you're tumbling down every ranking, every possible measure of a success of a society, and you've got millions of people hungry. What the Conservatives, I think, accurately refer to as a hunger crisis rather than an inflation crisis or whatever. When you have all these, you know, housing crisis, people can't find somewhere to live. You know, the judiciary's clogged up, doesn't work. The criminal code is inadequate, and so on and so on. Not just to mention natural resources. It's times like that where maybe you think, okay, we don't have this luxury anymore. Maybe we should cut back on some of these luxuries. Cut back on the diamond ring of infinity regulation.
What regulation
instead
brings
on solving the problem, like hunger. And then, so have the problem in mind. Okay, loads of people in Canada are hungry. And then say, how do we fix this? Don't worry about regulations and things like that. That can come after. When everyone's had a meal, then you can think, okay, how can we do this a bit better? How can we do this so that we can maintain the population of the, you know, orange spotted butterfly or something like that? That's later. That's not when people are hungry.
But if you want to create jobs in Canada, what you do is you create more regulations and hire more government employees. All of a sudden you've created jobs. More regulations, more jobs, more regulations, more jobs, more taxation, of course, that comes with it. And then what you have is suppression of industry. And suppression of industry to a point where it says, can't do it here, going somewhere else. And again, they could change much of this just in minutes. Remove the industrial carbon tax, remove the food packaging tax, remove the clean fuel regulations tax, and get rid of supply management. Just like that, food inflation would drop. Get rid of the interprovincial trade barriers. All these things are doable. Everything's there. It's removal of regulations. It's not adding more regulations.
Yeah. But take a look, you know, China's in vogue now, isn't it? For the Liberal Party, at least. Just read Chinese history. So it's something that I do for pleasure. It's a very fascinating culture, and it has one of the most interesting histories in the world. You can do it just for giggles. You do it for a laugh. But if you're in government, if you're in the Liberal Party, let's imagine that there's a Liberal MP or something or minister listening to this show. Read Chinese history, particularly in the 20th century, and look at what they did, because they had a problem, hunger, poverty, whatever it is, and they didn't indulge luxuries. They just said to themselves, we've got to fix this problem. Like, we need food. And they did anything they could do. Obviously, it was rather catastrophic when Mao was doing it, but that's not a bad attitude to have, is it? Overall, as long as you, don't do what Mao did. Please don't learn the wrong lesson. But the Chinese have this attitude where it's like, oh, okay, we're a lot poorer than France. Therefore, we're just going to do anything then. We're going to get as rich as they are, and we're going to do it. Like, we're going to overcome this obstacle. And it's not necessarily a bad attitude, is it?
Kris Sims is supposed to join us at 10:30 here, so we're going to see how that goes here. We're going to jump in, and we'll jump back to our show after, I think. We got another one here from Holly Dona Blacklock. So Cabinet will bring more order to labor relations at Canadian ports. Government House leaders, that's Steve McKinnon there. He said that yesterday's remarks follow a succession of cabinet orders quashing legal strikes. They've used more of the back-to-work orders than in the past. Legal strikes by port workers, hundreds of thousands of union jobs across the country at risk, even in my own riding, he said, at a newsprint mill when labor disruptions and threatened or actually executed. McKinnon testified in Commons Transport Committee. We want to bring more order. Cabinet wants to get a better process, a more predictable process. I mean, the Liberals have been accused by using back-to-work orders in squashing people's right to strike, and that was in the Air Canada strike and in many of the strikes that were on. Government House Leader Steve McKinnon, as Labour Minister in 24, said he considered labour disputes self-destructive. There's a limit to the economic self-destruction Canadians are willing to accept. The best deals are always those that are negotiated. But when agreements are delayed or never arrive in the presence of economic self-destruction, there's a duty to intervene. They intervened a lot, and they also made a lot of bad deals. Look at the postal thing. What is it, $10 million a day we're losing? $10 million a day? Some of this stuff is just disheartening. You do it over and over again. This is let's listen in here on. Let's listen to this here.
Minister of National Defence.
Speaker, last week we launched Canada's first ever defence industrial strategy. It's a plan that provides a signal to industry, to allies, to partners, to the Canadian Armed Forces and the Canadians alike that we are moving forward quickly and we're moving forward with purpose. We are building. We are partnering and we're buying Canadian. We're strengthening our relationship with our partners. We're transforming procurement. We're investing for results. That's what our new strategy is all about.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleagues should check out the Liberal Party's election campaign platform at page 63. I quote, "The federal government has spent too much." When the Liberals came to power, the debt was $700 billion. It has grown to $1.4 trillion in just 10 years. In their election campaign platform, they also talk about efficiency and results. Well, now we...
That's a little tough to listen to, for sure. There'll be lots of promises again in the military, lots of promises. Very, very light on delivery. Very light on delivery. I don't know where their delivery is. Like, what can we put a finger to of anything that's actually gotten better in almost a year now? Well, in 11 years.
Just, I mean, I say it every time, but the carbon tax, I can't think of anything else, really. Definitely, well, the carbon tax, and this is an obscure point, but Canada's, at least the reputation of the Canadian government, of the federal government, has improved. And, you know, they can have conversations with the Indians and the Chinese and so on, which is ultimately a good thing, rather than being in a kind of cold war with India. I don't think that was very clever.
And then here's another scandal that's about to happen. Now we're going to spend $7 billion on a new pension system. This is where it could make ArriveScam look like a good deal. Listen to this here. This is a new software. How are they paying this much for software? Listen in.
Opposition is saying. In fact, the initial program authority of $1.7 billion was intended to be used to kickstart the first phase. In fact, the program is under budget. And great news, Mr. Speaker, 7 million Canadians have transitioned to this new system. The system was 60 years old. Can you imagine that, Mr. Speaker? Paper applications being filed, lots of mistakes. And Mr. Speaker, this is going to make life easier for all seniors going forward. If the member opposite has some urgent case that they know of, please send them our way. We're able to process those in 24 hours. Yep.
Yet another scandal, Mr. Speaker. After the Phoenix scandal, Liberal incompetence has reached reach new heights, the highest heights in the CURAM file. The CURAM software is a federal version of Quebec's SACLIC. The bill for this IT project will come to $6.6 billion, and more than half of that amount will go to consultants who get away with delays, failures, and cost overruns without any consequences. Mr. Speaker, while Canadians are struggling, public money's being thrown out the window. Why are cost overruns part of Liberal DNA? Mr. Speaker.
That's good. That's good. That translator.
That was good, wasn't it?
Translator. Best translator ever.
Yeah, well, you must get bored doing it. So I'm glad she did that. I think she should be congratulated for that.
$6.6 billion and half the money to consultants. How much have we seen of this? The dental program that they tout a lot. Was it $473 million just for 2 years in administration? We can go on and on and on. You watch this show on a regular basis. We can show you all this fraud, waste, abuse. It's just absolutely, it just makes your heart sink, all the money that is wasted. How in this day and age with AI are we spending $7 billion for software? How? And how are the consultants? Like, I mean, who are all these consultants? And we're supposed to cut back on consultants, yet they seem to have access to the trough. And how many of these consultants actually end up working for government? Who's running the Canadian Infrastructure Bank? There's a couple of McKinsey guys in there. McKinsey is definitely one American firm that has tapped Canada for billions of dollars. By Canadian. By Canadian. Kris Sims is supposed to join us here in the next couple of seconds, but we're going to see if we can get this story done before Kris jumps in here. The war too small for a Centipath. The Persian Gulf War rates as a smaller, less costly conflict that doesn't warrant inscription on the National War Memorial, according to access to information records from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Recognition has been sought by Canadian veterans of the war that ended 35 years ago this week. But a total of 4,458 Canadians served in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm following Iraq's 1990 invasion of Kuwait. Canadian left that region 8 months later following the 1991 ceasefire. No Canadians were killed in combat. The departmental memo acknowledged that there was no written rules for inscription on the war memorial unveiled in 1939. A published set of criteria could not be found for a war or conflict to be recognized with dates inscribed on the National War Memorial. It said Canada suffered no loss of life during the Gulf War, although some returned home with heavy burdens. So, not big enough a deal.
But there's also, quite famously, Gulf War syndrome. They named a syndrome after that war. I'm sure that when they talk about heavy burdens, that must affect some of those Canadian service persons. So it is a bit harsh, that, isn't it? But it's also kind of, you would feel inevitably, wouldn't you, if you served in that war, you would feel like you would just question what it was for, if you should have done it. I mean, you would already ask that question, I think. But then for this to happen, it's just adds more questions.
Yeah, just like your service didn't matter. It's just, I don't know, like we have such a problem with our military, underfunded, under-equipped, underpaid, undermanned. And then this is just like a slap in the face. Like, you served, you went to war. Wow, nobody, well, I think that's our guest. Kris is logging in there. We're going to see if we can get her in here. See if we can position the camera in that. Waiting for our Desert Fox to look. There's Kris right there. Hi, Kris. Can you?
Hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you fine.
Wonderful.
I'm Jim Check, and to your other side, there's Ian Burns.
Hi. Thanks so much for having us on.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to let Ian kick this off. He had some questions for you.
Well, yeah, I've certainly written a few down. Well, the first one is, it's low-hanging fruit, I think, but we should talk about it. It's public sector pay rises, MPs pay rises. You've written, and your organisation has written a lot about this. I just wanted to sort of get your take on that, how they justify that, and what your criticism of that is.
I don't really know how they can justify it, frankly, considering the fact that they've taken a pay hike every April 1st, every year, even during the lockdowns. So while a lot of people were going out of work or getting pay cuts, it was a bad time. They never missed a beat. And now we have backbench members of parliament who have no critic role. They're not cabinet ministers. They don't even have a committee role. They're already making over $200,000 a year, plus all sorts of expenses that are covered. I'm talking like food, housing, transportation, utilities. The idea that none of them, except for now, until Mike Dawson, none of them stood up and said, you know what, I refuse my pay hike. We need to stand with people, and we're members of the House of Commons. We're going to stop it. So we don't think it's justified at all. And on top of being greedy, it sends a message throughout the rest of the bureaucracy, because then the big government unions come forward and say, well, look, these fellas have had a pay hike every single year, year over year, for the last however many years. They don't pause. They don't freeze. They don't cut. What gives? Give us a pay hike. And it's all coming out of taxpayers' wallets. So, yeah, we're very opposed to this.
Well, what's your response to the argument that you often hear, which is, if you want the best people, like these are very important jobs, if you want the best people, you have to give competitive salaries. What is your response to that?
That's a really interesting argument, and we hear it a lot. I would turn it around and say, what kind of governance do you think you're getting? Is this worth it? For folks who are sitting there thinking, wow, you know, my healthcare, I have no wait times. It's amazing at the passport office. Law and order are lawful and orderly. Things are going swimmingly. These fellas all deserve a pay hike. No, that's not the situation at all. Things are really, really hard out there. A lot of it is caused by government. So most of the time they're doing a terrible job. So no, it isn't attracting the best and brightest people. I've been in the game a long time. I worked on Parliament Hill for close to 20 years. And I gotta say, this current crop of members of Parliament, including cabinet, they're not really that great at their jobs. And nonpartisan, if I compare them to, say, the government of former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien, back when Paul Martin was finance minister, yeah, there's no real comparison. We got a lot of pretenders to the throne here.
Well, looking internationally, an example that they often put forward is Singapore, where they pay huge salaries, don't they? But Singapore, you have to admit, it's also an extraordinarily successful country, economically, socially. Like you say, that's maybe not been true in Canada for some time.
You have to look at the results. Yeah. And also, I think it's better to compare ourselves more to our constitutional monarchies, Westminster systems, something like Australia, New Zealand, maybe even the United States, but I know they're a little rowdy sometimes.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Parliament Hill. You're actually a journalist, though, and you're in the Parliamentary Bureau.
Yes.
And I feel it's necessary to talk about the CBC and the media, something that we often discuss. But the CBC, there are other people that got quite a nice pay rise, or at least some people at the CBC. You're talking about the inadequacy of MPs or the political class. I would just ask the obvious question: do you think they've earned that pay rise, considering their track record of holding these MPs to account?
It's pretty awful. So for folks who don't know, I was on Parliament Hill. It was, again, close to 20 years, around 15 or so. Most of that, I was a member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery, like a full-time member. I did house outs. I covered question period. I covered committee, all that stuff, for both mainstream and kind of upstart news networks. And full disclosure, I worked at CBC for about 6 weeks, and people were nice to me. This isn't a vendetta, but I did see how they function inside the castle. Number one, journalists should not be paid by the government, period. It's an obvious conflict of interest. You cannot hold the powerful to account, as a journalist should with the calling, if you're counting on the powerful for your paycheck. So even if you do your darndest as an individual person to hold whoever is standing there accountable, who's in government, and you think in your mind you're being as, clear-minded and objective and tough as possible, it's the perception of bias that destroys trust. It's the same as corruption. It's the perception of corruption. Once it's in there, trust is gone. And journalists, we bank on trust. If your viewers and your listeners and, your readers don't trust you, why would they listen to you? Why would they read you? And what I find alarming as a journalist, not just as a taxpayer, but as a journalist, what I find alarming is that now more than 60% of Canadians believe that journalists are deliberately trying to mislead them with statements they know to be false. It's astonishing. It's an annual survey on trust that is put out. It's mainstream.
Do you think
that really undermines the democratic system, doesn't it? I would just say, just to add on to the end of that.
Do you think that a lot of people think the CBC and CTV and Global are biased because of that perception of being, taking a lot of their salaries from the taxpayer? But we also say that they're actually used as a shield so that the Liberals actually block access by independent journalists like ourselves. We can send email after email. We have the receipts. Even a local MP here in this market, we send 7 emails and we know them personally, and they refuse to respond. So they refuse to do interviews. And so they say, well, we respond to the, the parliamentary gallery and that. And then it's kind of like an old boys club too. So they don't let in a lot of independent journalism. And so they literally use it as a shield to block access to real questions. Because where's the questions on the conflicts of interest with Carney and China? Where's the questions on the Freedom Convoy? Nobody's answered to that yet on the 2 courts that have now said that was illegal to use the invocation of the Emergencies Act. And maybe I'd just like your comments on that.
Great questions. So one, the Taxpayers Federation, we were fundamentally opposed to the Emergencies Act. We sent out many, many messages during that time, primarily because you should be able to protest your government. If you can't peacefully protest your government, how are we supposed to hold it accountable? And B, the idea of freezing bank accounts, like my hair is standing up on the back of my neck right now. That's gross. We can't allow that to happen. So it was very good to get those 2 court rulings. So that's one. 2, you're right. It is literally a club. The Parliamentary Press Gallery is a club. I know because I used to be a member of it when I was at CTV, when I was at Sun Media, when I was at the CBC, even when I was at Chum News back in the day, when I was reporting for talk radio. It's literally a club. And what happens is if you're not in that club, you don't get a Hill pass, which means you can't be up on the Hill after question period or attending committee, and you can't scrum that politician and ask those questions. So talk about gatekeeping. Like it's a physical gate in some cases that you can't get past unless you're an accredited member of the Parliamentary Press Gallery. And so it's a massive problem. I know that there's lots of independent journalism outfits that have attempted to get one of their journalists, one of their reporters in that club, and they won't let them in. So it is a big problem. And now that the vast majority of the mainstream media are on government payroll, that is a huge, crazy conflict of interest. Blacklock's reporter, which gets no money from the government, does an outstanding job of independent journalism. They crunched the numbers. They said that per media company employee, it works out to close to $30,000 a year. Can you imagine a third of your salary counting on that guy being happy with you, a cabinet minister or a prime minister? It can't happen. I'm shocked that it's gone on this long.
So does it worry you on accountability if with the floor crossing of Matt Jeneroux that the Liberals could get a majority because of that? And then there's really no accountability with media. The media seems to be compromised here, crippled and compromised. Like where will accountability come from then?
Great question. So 2 things need to happen. One, I will point out that part of our Westminster system, people can and do cross floors. They will change parties. I'll put it to you, what if there were some, God forbid, some crisis, right? And I don't know, conscription suddenly started and someone had a moral opposition to such a thing and he or she left their party. That's why floor crossing is allowed. However, a good way to do a check and balance on that is to give voters a tool. So if we had recall legislation at the federal level, that would mean that, say, a member of parliament, in this case Jeneroux, outrages his own voters in his own riding so much that they want to recall him, that we can do that in the province of Alberta. We should take that national, because this is what would happen. A by-election would occur, which is perfectly fair. That means that Jeneroux could say, you know what, I think I'm a really good MP, and I'm going to run for my job again. And his riding voters would be able to have a say-so. It can go either way. They can fire him, or they can re-elect him if they think he's doing a good job. So that would be a very fair tool that would still allow for floor crossing and party changing midstream, but it would give voters and the people a chance to have their say. So we think that needs to happen. That's one. Two, the second tool in the toolbox, and I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, journalists must not be paid by the government. Like,
we
at
say it all
all.
the time on here. Like, I mean, we must stop all funding, including the CBC. All funding must cease, especially since how it's one party funded, because one party says it's going to defund and the other party says they're going to increase, which is what it was actually a campaign promise with Mark Carney. They promised $150 million during the campaign. Well, one party said, going to defund. So it's literally like, that alone was just like such a threat to democracy.
And it's so obvious, right? Like, just picture yourself as the reporter standing there on Spark Street, okay? You've got candidate A, who, to your point, just said, I will give you more money. Here's a bag of $150 million if I win. Candidate B in the blue tie says, I will defund your organization completely. How are you calling that game straight? You never could. And this is why, honestly, it doesn't even matter as far as the, political opinions of whatever journalists. Yes, most of them in Ottawa lean left. That's understood. But the main issue here is the fundamental issue of journalists must not be paid by the government. It's a direct conflict of interest. And so this is why, God rest his soul, even if Rex Murphy were hosting the news and he threw to Don Cherry for sports, I'd love watching that. It would definitely align with my values better, but it would still be a conflict of interest if they were getting paid by the state. So this is why we need to defund all media.
And we've been fighting. I think our outlet has done more stories on the Online News Act than probably all the outlets combined. We've done so much on the Online News Act, and I've got some big interviews on it. And we even got a question into Mark Carney on the question that we were allowed one question, no follow-up. And the question was, will you repeal the Online News Act? And his response was, you're not going to like the answer. We're going to give more money to the CBC. That was
your question?
That was our question, yes.
I love that was your question. I clipped that.
We have to add, I think it's very important context, that we only got in there through, we had to be quite streetwise to even get in, because they weren't going to let us in.
Yep.
Which is another thing. We're talking about access. And yeah, I was furious because that happened with Justin Trudeau. We also asked Justin Trudeau about Meta. I don't know if you remember that, when he was in West Kelowna and he ranted about Meta. And he was like, this is on Meta. Yeah, I blamed it all on Meta. Then when he stopped being Prime Minister, the first thing he did was post a picture on Instagram with him in Canadian Tire. But anyway,
he doesn't really know where he is or what's going on, to be fair, but go ahead.
We struggled so much to get into that one. And I'm telling you, I was calling up the PMO, like so many emails just would not give me the location, as I'm sure you were. They email you the location. And it was the same with that Mark Carney business. And that was so dispiriting. I have to say, that really kind of broke my heart and demoralized me so much, because we got in, we asked a question that nobody else would have asked. And it was of great interest. CP reported it, CBC, I think, even reported it. It was everywhere. So it was obviously necessary. We did an important job, I think, for the national conversation. And yet we only got there by being a bit sort of tricksy. We had to kind of lean on our contacts and get ourselves in there. And it's just...
Had to pull an Indiana Jones and roll in under the door as it was closing? Yeah.
Just to ask a question. And then there was no follow-up, of course. So we were going to ask about the $1 billion loan for BC Ferries. Still hasn't, to my knowledge, Mark Carney has still not been asked about that, even though it's within his power to terminate that. Ultimately, he could bring that to an end.
We had two questions. Two questions we had was the Online News Act and the BC Ferries. And we thought, well, somebody's going to ask the BC Ferries question for sure, right? So we're going to go with the one that self-serves us, because we need the Online News Act. Because I was interviewed by the National too. Since the Online News Act came into play, we've lost half our traffic and half our revenue. And that's been most outlets across Canada, and close to 100 have failed since the Online News Act, and they seem to be okay with it. And even Stephen Fury, the local MP, said it needs to go, yet they continue to have it because it crushes independent media. It literally put the boot on our throat, and we've had to cut back, we've had to do all these things, and that really is what born this show here, Ian and I doing this show, is because we had to find somewhere else, because we had the biggest social footprint in the Okanagan here on social media, because we know how to do stuff. And they took it all away from us. They literally took it all away. And it was just devastating, and it was crushing. And I think they gave me like a minute on National to explain on the National. Like that was it, right? Because they weren't interested at all, right?
They should put you. They should put you on the At Issue panel. I'm not kidding. The At Issue panel has got these fossilized panelists that have been on there since, you know, Adam was knee high to a grasshopper. And last I checked, I think they're paid around $300, $400 per appearance. Per appearance. This
I'd
is
be
on
willing
top
to do
of what
it
they
for
make
free.
at their day job.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'd do it for free.
I know.
Do you know what I mean?
This is what I'm saying.
Well,
And
it should
here-
be for free, really.
Yeah.
It's so infuriating because what you're describing here is the government crushing accountability, transparency, and the potential for dissent. Like, this is a huge problem. This is why media must be independent. And I'm glad you brought up the Online News Act, because I find a lot of people still don't quite understand it. And when you combine that with what now I get all the CRTC update emails that come out on like a Friday afternoon. Some of them are disturbing. The one I'm mostly concerned about is where they're basically saying that they want to apply CRTC rules, so that used to be just for broadcasting, radio and television, to producers or hosts of podcasts. So people tried to get away with it saying, oh, well, they're not going after, you know, Bob's podcast. It's like, yeah, but they're going after Apple and Spotify and YouTube, the ones who are foreign platforms which host podcasts. How long do we think that these foreign massive companies are going to want the headache of dealing with some Canadian bureaucrat in Gatineau so Bob's podcast can stay on the air? This is super chilling.
Especially when we're talking about the lack of scrutiny, the lack of opposition, let's say, within the media. They don't really do their job of holding particularly the Liberals to account. Right now, we're in a situation where I'd say some of the most prominent voices doing just that are on social media. They're on X, they're on YouTube. So that is quite chilling. And I said this to Jim, I think yesterday, you know, the idea that even us, in our humble little podcast here, the idea that we're kind of, we're so peripheral as to be ignored. I'm not so sure. It's certainly a possibility, I think.
Well, thank goodness Elon Musk bought Twitter and was able to, from what I can tell, restore a lot of free speech on there, because things were getting pretty hairy, even with something like the carbon tax, for example. So I remember back when, you know, the carbon tax was the best thing since sliced bread, and, you know, all the mainstream media were going along with it, and most of the folks in government were going along with it. For a while there, even the Conservatives, back when what's-his-face broke his promise and went, you know, full bore on the carbon tax, there was a problem, because we actually had ministers of the Crown, tweeting back at us, like Taxpayers Federation. We've been around since 1990, okay? We're an advocacy group, saying, oh, you're reporting on this potential truck tax, for example, which was real. They were definitely studying it. That's misinformation. That's disinformation. This is a minister of the Crown saying this. And then in their next breath, they say something like, we need to crack down on misinformation and disinformation. And for a politician who has power, any sort of criticism or dissent could easily be called misinformation now, couldn't it? Because it's super annoying and pesky to have to answer to the people. So we were getting dangerously close to even something as homespun as the Taxpayers Federation getting banned, because we were talking about things like carbon taxes or a potential tax on pickup trucks. So it gets hairy fast. Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
Yeah.
So back when I was at CTV National, Prime Minister Stephen Harper was in charge, And they started, so after an event, some grip and grin or baby kissing or something, they would always have questions from the Parliamentary Press Gallery, which traveled around with him to various places. I remember distinctly that when the PMO said, okay, we don't like everybody shouting at once. So when he stops talking and we start asking questions, we don't like when 13 people yell at the same time. So we're going to put your names on a list. We'll get to all of you, but we're going to go through it in an orderly manner. So everybody put your name on the list for first come, first serve, and we'll go in an orderly manner. They freaked out. Parliamentary Press Gallery freaked out. They talked about it every single day for like a year of like controlling the narrative, controlling the message, trying to gag the media. It was the dumbest thing. And here we now see the same mainstream media on government payroll. It's astonishing. It is astonishing how much things have changed.
And how many interviews have they had with Mark Carney? How easy is it to ask a question of Mark Carney or any minister for that matter? You know, it's how often have I heard Melanie Joly in particular say, oh, shush, everybody, shut up. You'll all get a chance to ask a question. 30 seconds later, she walks away with people shouting questions. It's kind of just, it's so much worse now, isn't it? It's so much harder to ask a question.
One of the things that I use sometimes to get interviews, and I can get some with the NDP here, not so much with the Liberals, is use Donald Trump as an example. They talk about him being the threat to democracy, yet he'll stand in front of reporters and do interviews with reporters he doesn't like and outlets he doesn't like. But he does it all, like, I mean, he does a press briefing every day. Like, he'll stand in front of the reporter, and I would rather have Mark Carney to say to me, you suck, and then answer the question. But they won't even respond to our emails. They will not even respond to our emails. And we say, you're the threat to democracy because you won't even answer. You refuse to be held accountable. I don't know, we could list off how many people we've reached out to. Like, we're trying to get an answer from Mark Miller, and nothing. Stephen Fear, nothing. And it's just, and you know, it's absolutely crazy. We emailed the State Department, U.S. State Department, got an answer, what, 4 hours?
I think it was less than that.
I've noticed that too. Yeah. Even as a Taxpayers Federation, when I'm asking like really mundane things, like certain like committee questions or date questions and stuff, it's really hard to get information out of them. And in the rare times where I'm trying to do like a comparative of like salaries or something, when I contact, say, a foreign, like either in the UK or the USA, they get back to me typically much faster. You're right. You're right. It's our same experience.
Well, Ian worked for the UK government, and you're going to share your experience with.
No, well, I mean, it seems obvious, but in a press office in the British government, every email must be responded to. You know, they have the technology, Microsoft Outlook, and so on, and spreadsheets.
Email.
Every email must be responded to, and if you don't respond to it, just to say, "Hi there, I got your email. I'm working on this." If you don't do that, in at least the government department that I worked in, you're going to be in hot water. You're going to be punished for incompetence. Whereas Jim was talking about Mark Miller. I asked Mark Miller for an interview the day he was sworn in as Culture Secretary. And it took, what was it, like 2 months, maybe? I think it was 2 months before I got a response saying basically no.
Oh my goodness.
Check the website.
And he's the minister responsible for what you're talking about here.
And he's the minister responsible, obviously, for Bill C-18, which is the subject that we've kind of obsessed about for some time. I also tried to interview his predecessor, Stephen Guilbeault, same story. Credit to Pascal Santonge, I did get an interview with her. Didn't really learn all that much, but at least she said yes, you know.
Took forever,
to
be fair.
Credit, I guess.
7 or 8.
Take forever.
Yeah.
But I mean, my question to you is, given all we've discussed, we've done a lot of complaining there, but you know, you've got a lot of experience, you understand this. As well as anyone. Can you explain why? What's the reason? Why is the media culture and the political culture so narrow and restricted here?
Okay. I've got a couple of answers to that. The Taxpayers Federation, if I have that hat on right now, it's because it's there and it's easy. And it is the easiest thing to do. It's similar to corporate welfare, right? So, you know, if a, motor company, if an auto manufacturer or a helicopter manufacturer, whoever, some big corporation, some cricket farm in London, Ontario, says, hey, out here in the free market is pretty tough. I'm going to go get a big dollop of taxpayer cash from the government. It's just easy. So that's the Taxpayer Federation answer, is that media companies are doing it because they can. And the money is there because the government, for some reason, is super willing to fund mainstream media. I don't know why a government would want to basically own a massive media company. Strange. Sorry, I can't die of sarcasm. My second answer, and this is as a journalist, there's a few things that have happened here. Media, including print, did not adjust to the internet fast enough. Some smart dudes and dudettes in the print industry way back in the day, I'm talking early 2000s, thought that it would be totally fine just to give your product away for free forever and that nothing bad would happen to them. That was kind of silly. Which is why now we have the print. We used to be the print guys who were trying to get these link taxes put through. And all of us warned them, this is not going to save your newspaper. It's going to remove it from Facebook and it's going to tank your business. And sure enough, that's what's happened. And the CBC took the lion's share of the money. So they totally came in and stole their sandwich, even what they were trying to do. So there was a couple of model problems that were happening there. They didn't adjust quickly enough. But from a media insider perspective, in my opinion, this is my opinion, not CTF's, two things happened. One, the number of journalists were decimated, gone. Most of these newsrooms are empty now. The buildings are empty. So I'll give you an example. When I graduated journalism school, it was a trade school out of BCIT in 98 or 99. There were 2 full-time salaried, I mean paying your mortgage salaried, jobs at the Vancouver Sun for reporters just on softwood lumber. Just that one topic. There were so many reporters and journalists in the industry that our justice system, for example, was being covered all the time. Being a court reporter was standard fare. You just went to the courthouse and reported on what was happening that day. It didn't have to be a huge biker trial or something sexy. You just worked there. That was your workplace. They had little nameplates in the front pew of all the courthouses. CTV, CBC, National Post, whatever it is. They're empty now. There aren't full-time court reporters anymore. So I'll give it to you this way. I've been the producer of the 6 o'clock news on CTV. The local reporters who are your consumer affairs reporter, so, that furnace company is ripping people off locally. City hall reporter, what's the mayor spending money on? Court reporter, fill in a whole bunch of other stuff. Sports. You used to have these 2-minute packs coming through all the time that were all local. They were all fully paid. They were all full-time. Most of them were pretty experienced. They're gone. They're gone. That is why you get so much government smog. Some government official, some bureaucrat can stand there in high heels for 3 hours at a podium and they'll just take them live because they have to fill the beast because there's nothing else to give it. There's no reporters anymore. They're decimated. For every 20 that used to be in a newsroom that I used to work in, there's 2 or 3. Last I checked, I'll give you the news director. I won't say which outlet because I'm sure they're trying hard. It was the assignment editor / news director, which used to be a serious hard-nosed job in a TV newsroom up in Edmonton, major TV station, was 23 years old. It's astonishing. So that's one. There are no journalists anymore. That's why they have now glommed onto government. 2, the nature of how you train to be a journalist has changed, in my experience. Back when I was going through trade school, you had to be curious, plucky, fearless, even a little bit rude. You had to ask tough questions. You used to have to not care about hurting people's feelings. You had to love chasing people down and being on the phone. And it was more of a calling and a trade. Okay? If you had your pencil and your microphone, you were good to go. Now it's more of a paper journalism job. You have your master's degree in a super fancy journalism school, but you might be afraid to phone people. Mm-hmm. I meet introvert journalists now who are afraid of confrontation and they're afraid to ask questions out loud. So the nature of that job has changed. It's those 2 things that now have it clinging to mummy government. And it's a massive problem.
Well, we don't want to keep you too long.
I hope that was an okay answer.
No, that was great. We're going to finish our
My
show
experience
here.
as well, I would say, I would just like to sort of raise my hand and say, yeah, I agree. I've experienced a lot of what you have, and remarkable. I mean, that the idea of young people as well. Nothing against the young, we love the youth, but
Yes.
senior jobs in journalism require experience, and you need to be wise. It's not just experience, is it? It's kind of wisdom. It's like, oh, I've seen this 100 times. This is what they're doing. When the police try and give you the wrong idea or something like that, or the government tries to fool you. And it's that, when you were listing all the things that they don't have, one of the things I was thinking of is skepticism as well. Skepticism is no longer, like, that should be the default characteristic of a journalist. And that's why I love Holly Dawn and Blacklocks, because it's
Me
just, it's like
too.
skepticism, the website. And it's like, that's what we need. Every journalist used to be like that. But now it's kind of, if anything, you see people are more inclined to defend government narratives rather than question them. And that is absolutely the wrong way around. Yeah.
That was an anathema back in the day. Like, the idea that you would defend the government and turn the microphones around on the people, like, you'd faint thinking of doing something like that in any newsroom back in the day. But it is changed.
I'm not sure if this was intentional or not, the Online News Act, and also the funding, that it actually turned out to be a great shield for the Liberals from accountability, or that it just happened to be like that, and they're just like, this actually works pretty good. And because they're continuing it, because they could repeal the Online News Act. I know that the Trade Commission in the United States has said it's one of the problems. I think they listed three things: the Online News Act, the supply management, and the banking oligopolies here in Canada. And yet we continue down the same path. And maybe they hope that they'll run this Online News Act until there's almost like nobody left other than the CBC.
And wouldn't they love that? They've actually said similar things. They've said things along those lines, if I'm paraphrasing to be fair. But in committee, various heritage ministers have basically said that, of, well, those other outlets, those ones on the interwebs, they're full of misinformation and disinformation. You can't trust them. The only trusted news source is the CBC, which is super creepy.
Social cohesion.
Ugh.
Mark Miller said that a couple of weeks ago. Legitimate and illegitimate. That was his distinction. Yeah.
And as a journalist, like, to your point on skepticism, I'm so glad you brought that up. Journalists used to be the most skeptical, highly critical. You'll question your own mother. Like, that was the style. And it didn't matter which government was in power. They'd be like, really? I don't think so. I'm going to ask you 5 follow-up questions. And now it's just like, oh, let's just type up the press release that the government sent to us. Let's take it live. Let's not disrupt the flock. And part of the problem is that club. They need to open up the parliamentary press gallery so that independent news organizations can get their journalists in there and start asking those uncomfortable questions. Because even when I was there with Sun News Network, and I was there from startup to shutdown, we were built off Sun Media, one of the oldest newspaper chains in all of Canada, and they still treated you like you were some hostage situation. They're like, are you okay working there? Because I was asking uncomfortable questions of the government. It's this weird club that needs to be opened up.
Look what happened at the leadership debate, or the election debate, with Carney and Poilievre and Blanchette there. And when a few of the reporters, I think it was Rebel News and maybe, when they got in line, they actually were smart enough to get in line first and got to ask some questions. Look what the CBC did the following day. They said they were unsafe, and they actually got Elections Canada shut down the second day of questioning. That's how much it's such a boys' club. They didn't know how. They tried to block Rebel and them from actually getting in there, and the court said they had to get in. And then all of a sudden, they couldn't figure out how to block them from getting in line, so they played the unsafe card, which is absolutely, like, I don't know what the word is, like flabbergasting or whatever it is, but it's like, how crazy could they say that they felt unsafe from other reporters? And yet the media bought it. The people bought it. Everybody seemed to buy it hook, line, and sinker, that the Rebel News and Junos were going to actually attack them or something.
Yes. So psychologically, this is just, again, my experience. CTF wasn't involved with this, but in my experience as a journalist on the Hill, it's a lot like high school. So, the in crowd and the cool kids, and they all kind of do the same thing. And I'm not even using that as a criticism. It's more of just a description. It's like that. And so they're all asking the same questions. They all assume that they all think the same way. Nobody wants to ruffle any feathers. So they only ask the things that are allowed. And it's more of a social order. It's a pecking order.
Yeah.
Somebody comes blasting in there saying, hey, Prime Minister Carney, why did you blow 90 grand on your damn plane trips last time? Who do you think you are? Why are you spending this money on, what is it, caviar? What'd you eat? They would be astonished. Like, how dare you come in here, show up in boots, and be so rude? And not like don't even use the language. Don't even use damn or anything like that. Be very clear but firm. They would act like you were a barbarian at the gate. And again, that is not journalism. That is stenography. And we are suffering for it. Like, taxpayers, Canadians are suffering for it. Close to half of our paychecks are going up in smoke and taxes. People are fighting to afford food. Like, we need more accountability. The way it was much better. And even if it were a Liberal government in charge, like I said, the Taxpayers Federation gave Paul Martin an award for slaying the deficit. He was a Liberal finance minister, but they weren't pulling this stuff.
No. Well, we do thank you for coming on. It's been amazing. We'd love to have you on again.
I'd love to. This has been so much fun.
That's great. We do
loads of questions I would love to ask you, so definitely.
We do have.
And I also just want, because we were talking about CBC and a bit of a lighthearted end, one of our members here, one of our viewers, has asked if the CBC crying room is real. So I thought I'd put that to you as our last question.
So it was, they have quiet rooms, is what I heard it called. And I only worked inside of the Ottawa, it was national, but it was the Ottawa one right between Queen and Sparks. They'll like this. Back then, this is, I can't remember, around 2010 or so. I can't remember when I worked there. It was only for a brief period of time. They had video casts of yoga that were being recorded somewhere in Toronto, I assume. And you clicked on it. I'm not kidding at all. And you could click on it and you could do like yoga at your desk.
Nice.
It was so weird. And here, you guys have both been in newsrooms. It was so strange having to work in there because it was silent. It was like an archive of a museum. And like everybody was like doing their work and clicky clacky, but like nobody was talking. And like in my newsrooms, they was always boisterous. People are shouting back and forth. They were bouncing ideas. I had to actually put headset on and like listen to just committee and like drink like sleepy time tea, because otherwise I was being disruptive. It's such a strange environment.
Well,
that sort of explains a lot, though, I must say.
Well, thank you, Kris. We're going to get back to our show here. We're going to finish it up because we got another show that's coming up here right away, too. Thank you, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Bye now. And we're going to get right back into it here. We got lots, and we're going to kind of like pick up speed here because we're a little late, a little long in the tooth, because we have Renee Merrifield coming up with Beyond the Ballot at noon. So we're going to pick it up in hyperspeed. Here it is. The Department of Health will not support a Senate bill mandating health warnings on liquor labels, according to a briefing note. And that's after the Canadian Medical Association endorsed the bill, blaming alcohol for 17,000 preventable deaths annually. And it says our government is aware some countries are introducing alcohol warnings, including alcohol labeling. The health department would monitor alcohol policy internationally and research related to public health intervention. Bill S-202, the act to amend the Food and Drug Acts, would mandate that all alcohol products carry a label warning against the risk of alcohol consumption. And a similar bill, S-254, lapsed in Parliament in 2023. Dr. Margot Burnell, president of the Canadian Medical Association, in testimony last October, told the Senate Social Affairs Committee the bill was necessary. As physicians, we witnessed the effects of alcohol use on patients every day. We know alcohol consumption leads to over 800,000 hospital and emergency room visits every year. And while alcohol has been classified as a Group 1 carcinogen for decades, this information has been largely withheld from consumers. Over 40% are unaware alcohol consumption increases the risk of cancer. Labels on alcohol beverages would empower Canadians to make informed decisions. It is the top 3 preventable risk factors for developing cancer after cigarettes and obesity. and it's been linked to more than 200 health conditions and diseases, including liver cirrhosis, alcohol use disorder, cardiovascular disease, and complications in newborns. And the bottom line, the alcohol industry and lobby are interested in one thing and one thing only, and that's profit, said Brazeau. They do not care about the health and well-being of Canadians. I used to smoke when I was a youngster. I think I quit when I was around 23 when they started putting those ugly-looking pictures on the cigarette packages here. But there's definitely no appetite here in Canada for labels. And our own Dr. Bonnie Henry there, she, while she's doling out medical advice and telling you what to do, owns part interest in a winery here in British Columbia.
But also, where would they find the room? If you think about a little taster bottle of whiskey, for example, so you got to put it in English and French. And if it's from another country, let's say it's like, I don't know, from Japan or something like that, you got some sake, then it'll also be in Japanese, won't it? Obviously, because it'll be imported. How are you supposed to do that?
RFK Jr. just called out, and I was going to play the clip, but I won't. Ultra processed foods. I mean, he's leading a charge on ultra processed food, dyes, everything like that. I mean, if you read some of the labels, you wouldn't want to put that into your system. But he's got so much pushback from the food lobbies and that because the red dyes and all these dyes they're putting in. And, he's got some really good results, too, in cereals and that, all the dyes that are in things like Fruit Loops and Skittles and all kinds of stuff. But he's trying to push for healthier foods in their school programs as well. And he's been lambasted many times on that. And again, instead of playing all these... What's that?
I just wish he wouldn't do the sort of silly videos with his shirt off and jeans jumping in the pool with Kid Rock and things like that. Because a lot of what he's doing makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? But I feel
You're
like
jealous that he's got a better body than you at 75 or something like that.
He definitely does. Maybe that's why. Maybe it's jealousy. That's why I'm so angry about it. But I just feel like, like roasting the turkey in the barrel of whatever it was, boiling hot fat, things like that. He's given his enemies material, especially what I'm saying, and that will ultimately be used against him.
He's his own man. Liberals have the worst housing record in generations, and I was going to play the clip, but I mean, it's pretty obvious. We talk about it all the time. Like, it's absolutely atrocious. And, and we say it on this show all the time. They promised 500,000 homes a year, which is an additional about 250,000 homes a year. And about $4.5 billion, a new housing ministry, and all these things are kicking off. And when they get done, I think it was a couple months ago we did a story, they got 9 homes built in their first 9 months, 9 homes. And then the PBO says with all that money, they're going to build about 26,000 homes. Not far cry from, what is that, 2.5 billion homes, right? So, or what is that, 250 times 5, right? So 2.5 billion, yeah. 2.5 million, sorry. Not billion. But look at here's a chart here for you to look at. This is Canada's housing downturn. What's that?
Is it not 1.5? Oh, no, 2.5. 250. Okay.
2.5 million, not billion. Million. Look at this chart. Canada. Remember when Canadian real estate was just flying? It was just like, they never end. This is going to be like Canada real estate, all Canadian wealth. Look at this. The only people that were kind of even running neck and neck with Mark Carney, China. And China's had a huge downturn in their real estate market. And Mark Carney had to borrow money, literally, from the Bank of China, or from Xi himself in the Bank of China, to float some of his real estate offerings there. This is where we're at. This is Canada. It's good.
And bear in mind, this thing with China, it's probably a lot worse than that.
Yeah, what they report.
Sort of data that we actually have access to. It's so serious in China that you have like dozens and dozens of tower blocks, which is just completely empty in all kinds of cities, including very populous cities. Like, it's an absolute catastrophe in China. So yeah, to be in the same basket as them in any way, even if that's not completely accurate, but to be mentioned in the same breath is very, very bad.
Maybe we're just going to run Renee Merrifield's show into this show, because we're going to be back at noon with Renee Merrifield and Beyond.
We're doing 24-hour news.
This is the new CNN, the ICNN, I guess, the Independent Canadian News Network. And if you want to help us out, you can join Thinking Canadian, or you can share this on your Facebook. That'd be great too. Just get it out there as many people as possible. Here's mortgage debt may blow past $2 trillion in 2026. Some really bad numbers are coming as mortgages start set to renew after Tiff Macklin said, go ahead, Canada. Go ahead and take out that big mortgage. We're not going to raise interest rates in the foreseeable future. And then proceeded to raise them in unprecedented fashion, 19-fold. Basically a big bear trap, right? So missed mortgage payments have now been creeping higher, especially in the higher cost provinces like Ontario. And lender switching. And we're starting to see Equifax data showing 90-day plus mortgage delinquency rates jump 30% year over year in the fourth quarter across Canada, and up as much as 54% in Ontario. Those are not good things. About another 1.2 million mortgage are expected to renew at higher rates this year. Many Canadians, I think it's almost half or $200 away from meeting their monthly obligations. Not good news for many, many Canadians.
It's terrible. And, often the haughty, a lot of haughty Canadians, you might even call them liberals, they react when they see news in America, which is similar, where it's like X percentage of Americans are $200 away or something like that from an empty bank account. It's like, yeah, this is very much happening here too. And that should be your priority.
This one, I'm going to play the clip because this one is going to make you as angry gets. And this is the immigration system. This is from a witness here at committee here. They always talk about, you go ahead and play it, actually. We'll talk about it after. Go ahead.
Insight as to why you think the STEM category for the express entry system was removed. And do you just have some insight into why that was removed, and at a time when there are well-documented shortages in many of the disciplines in that STEM category?
Thank you for the question. So we did some digging when we were writing that article. We had requested a couple of ATIPs. From what I saw in an ATIP from 2024, there was an instruction to halt all, by IRCC ministerial instructions, to halt all STEM draws sometime in 2024. I believe it said that there was no STEM draws that should have been conducted past the summer, but there was no justification provided in that ATIP. This doesn't even begin to cover the entire issue, because a bigger part is that 19 core STEM occupations were also removed from the category, which is when we talk about Canada becoming a competitive nation compared to the United States, and topics such as artificial development and building data centers, or becoming like a leading nation in terms of technology. How are we doing that if we removed every single occupation that is related to that direction from the STEM category? And the IRCC has not provided a single documented fact regarding why they are choosing to pause STEM.
Because it seems to me that...
That's good. That's good. So they talk about immigration, and they say to you, oh, we need to bring in all these people because of science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. We need all these people in STEM. But then they halt those people, and then they open the gates for temporary foreign workers that are going to work at Tim Hortons and A&W. And then they form
obviously committing crimes as well. So then obviously their character was obviously not, wasn't tested beforehand.
And then they open the gates for foreign students as well, and then allow them to work, which drives up unemployment for our Canadian youth. Taxes, our healthcare system, all this stuff. Yet the people we actually need, they pump the brakes on. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Maybe we'll ask Evan Solomon for an interview, and he'll come on and explain how it makes sense to not fast-track AI scientists.
We go back to Kris Sims' interview, and thank you for her for joining us too. It goes back to that. Where's the accountability? Because these are the tough questions to be asked. Because you stand up there and you talk about Canada's going to lead in AI and all this stuff, and these are the people we need. We stopped those people from coming. Yet we became an HR department for Tim Hortons and A&W to import unskilled labor, cheap labor, slave labor, according to a UN-based report, slave labor into Canada. And then flood the colleges so that they can, like the guy in Conestoga there can make over $600,000 a year. There's so many problems. And the media, this is just another highlight how the media is failing at its job. So we're going to put that letter on our website so you can start flooding their inboxes with requests that they talk to Ian and I. It's absolutely crazy. And Pierre Poilievre has put out a thing too. We're going to introduce a motion to remove social benefits for fake refugees. And these are people that have been denied asylum, yet they stay past, they're not even supposed to stay, and they continue to get benefits. We've talked about this so many times as well. So we're not going to go into it, because just in the interest of time.
I just mentioned Kris Sims, who was on earlier there, she was talking about the panelists on CBC, wasn't she? And how they get paid a certain amount of money. What did you say? They're fossils or something like that. Anyway, one of those people, Andrew Coyne, has been really having a go at Pierre Poilievre for this video. I don't know if you've seen it or any of our viewers have seen it, but he's gone in saying that it's like sort of implying that it's not within the realms of acceptability and that he's lost the election. He's given up already. He's just trying to kind of like shore up the base and things like that. Just kind of like a real attack, like a political attack on him for what many people are saying is literally just pointing out the obvious, that it doesn't really make sense to provide eye care and physiotherapy and other
Better
things
care
to people who are not citizens, not permanent residents, not anything within the Canadian system.
This is from the National Post. Overwhelmed by asylum claims, Ottawa. We talked about this too as well. Ottawa just said it's easier to say yes than to say no, because then people won't hear it. Just like, no questions asked, come on in. And we got to play this one because we haven't had a competitor for Fool of the Day yet other than Francois Philippe Champagne. But here's Gary talking about immigration. Like, wow, if you really want to push, how did this guy get elected? I don't understand. Let's play this clip here.
Merci pour la question, Mr. Speaker. Let me be very clear. Canada has one of the most robust immigration refugee protection system in the world. The Immigration Refugee Board is the gold standard by which adjudication are made towards refugee protection. As a country that is a signatory to the Refugee Convention of 1951, it's important that we have full faith in our system, Mr. Speaker. The IRB does adjudicate and ensures that those who are inadmissible, those who are ineligible to seek asylum, do not go forward, and those who are deemed to be clear refugees do get asylum, Mr.
Talking about trust in the system, I don't think you standing there speaking is conducive to Canadians having any faith in the system, frankly, when you've been recorded speaking to somebody totally undermining the law and saying that you'll ensure that the law doesn't apply to one person while it applies to everybody else. I mean, the fact that he's still in a job degrades faith in institutions, I would argue.
And he's really famous for his gun grab, but there's a rally that's going to take place in Quebec City, against the Liberals government's gun grab and compensation scheme. The Liberal Party chose to ban a wide variety of guns in the aftermath of Nova Scotia shootings in 2020, during which a man used an already illegal firearm to murder 22 people. Commenting on the rally this week, the National Firearms Association said Quebec is central to what happens next. Participation here will shape the future of this program nationwide. So they're pushing.
And that quote, this quote is about the gun buyback scheme. That quote should just be, we should just have that. We should give that to the Desert Fox, so he's got it as a shortcut. Quebec is central to what happens next. That should just be what we always
put that up. No, we're just kidding. Don't worry about it. And they're attacking Danielle Smith. I'm not going to go into it, but they're attacking Danielle Smith on her newcomers policy as well. Even CBC fact-checked her. It's just attack after attack after attack. But in the interest of time here, because again, I got a show with Renee Merrifield at noon here. Eleanor Circle put this out. Listen to this clip here. Like, it's all spin, NDP and Liberal. It's just basically a spin factor. They market McKinsey Co. and that makes so much money. Listen to how many people work in the PR staff of the BC government. Listen to this. Well, we have no money. We have no money.
In today's shrinking media ecosystem, the province maintains a robust communications arm. In fact, according to the government's online directory, the number of communications people funded by the taxpayer to push the government line is 152. That's 152 public affairs officers, communications managers, and directors. And these are just the folks working directly for the BC government ministries. It does not include the PR people working for the Crown Corps, health authorities, or even the Premier's office. 152 comm staff.
Yeah, so the core government, the public service that you're talking about, we've actually reduced the size of that group by about 2,000 people over the last year. We've had a hiring freeze in place. We're going to continue to drive down those numbers.
Here's a look at government PR budgets over time. Spending skyrocketed under the BC Liberals in the 2000s. And while the NDP has cut back, critics say not enough.
Well, it's about priorities. This is a time where government is cutting funds for our most vulnerable.
That's good. We got any interest of time. This you know who are all these PR people? They were ex-journalists that got fired from their newsrooms. Now they work for the government.
You know, we could have chatted with Kris Sims forever, couldn't we? But this is also a subject that we could have talked about, where people are being squashed out of journalism for many reasons, and then they go to the dark side and churn out propaganda for the government and kind of overwhelm journalists, because there's like 5 or 6 or more of these PR people per journalist. You're just outnumbered.
Yeah. I mean, we see this even in Kelowna, that they, and I mean, I remember raising the questions with Interior Health, like you have like 16, 17 people in the PR department and we can't get a response. Like, what are they literally doing if we can't even get a response? And same thing goes, you know, like for the city of Kelowna, they have so many people working in the PR departments, and yet it's so hard to get a response.
This is political warfare, basically, with the taxpayers' coin and the taxpayers' institutions. This is just, you know, these are like foot soldiers in the information war. That's the only way to really look at it.
And a lot of them got hired and say, you don't have to buy, like they used to buy ads, like, you know, the city of Kelowna and stuff, they used to buy ads in publications like ourselves. And they just said, oh, no, we can have a PR department and we'll just send press releases, because the newsrooms are so strapped. They're just looking, they're hungry for content. So if you feed them a press release, they'll just put it up for you for free. And they did it. They absolutely did it. And crazy world. That school trustee that got that $750,000 fine from the BC Human Rights Tribunal is going to appeal that. The statements he made about transgenderism, and he's planning to appeal that ruling. Barry Neufeld.
He's somebody that, maybe not the man himself, I don't know if he would appear, but certainly his lawyer. It would be good to have a conversation with him. So
try to get him on.
Something that we work on.
I'm going to kind of blow by a couple.
This is a massive story. This is an enormous story. And then Barry Neufeld himself has even said, I'm happy this happened. I'm glad that they fined me that much, because it's brought people's
attention to it.
It's brought it to people's attention. And it wouldn't have done that if it was less, if it was like $7,000 or something else. I think he said even if it was 75,000, people wouldn't have paid attention, but because it's so huge, it's attracted a lot of attention.
It's brought the eye of Sauron right directly on top of this issue for sure. I'm going to move on to some of the U.S. stuff here real quick here. So they are, the State of the Union takes place tonight. We'll have some coverage of that tomorrow. The State of the Union takes place, and the U.S. men's hockey team will be attending this State of the Union as a guest. And then Trump also invited the officer from Lincoln Riley's killer there to talk about, you know, his mass deportation plan. I mean, that's what the Americans voted for, even though CBC seems to want to do like 10 stories a day on ICE. And we talked about this yesterday. Sorry I'm going so fast here, but Trump recognizing that there's a lot of people going after him. Let's listen to what he has to say. We don't have it? Okay.
I don't know how long I'll be around. Got a lot of people gunning for me, don't I? Huh? But I will not forget them. I'm never going to forget them. I don't know how long I'll be around. Got a lot of people.
That's good. That's good.
He's been listening to the show, hasn't he?
There you go. I'm going to move on to this Terry Newman piece. A Wall Street Journal reporter, not the CBC, called out our government. How many times have you and I highlighted this? It's the American media that is coming to the rescue of Canada. And literally
So
the American
weird.
State Department, sometimes in the Online News Act, because our own media doesn't want things to change because they're resting comfortably in their buckets of sausage rolls that they don't want to rock the boat. They would rather see outlets die, in journalism die in Canada, and Mark Carney retain his Liberal government because he controls the tap and the funds, and they seem to be benefactors of those funds.
But the problem's even deeper than that, isn't it? Listen to Kris Sims there saying about the yoga room. I mean, but not just that, but the idea of a quiet newsroom. Like, you really have to emphasize just how boisterous and mad a proper newsroom is. It's like, it's like Grand Central at 7 a.m. or something. It's like people screaming at each other, phones going off, TVs on everywhere because you've got to watch live TV all the time. Like, a newsroom is a mad place. And she's saying, at the CBC at least, that it was just all silence.
I
and
could
a
use
yoga room.
I could use a sausage roll, Peter, because I got to go on again here at noon here with Renee Merrifield, and then I have Dennis Storchuk at 1:30. So I won't even have time to eat a sausage roll. But well, lucky I
Do
ate
it on
some
air.
breakfast. What's that? Do it on
Do it
air.
on air.
Chow down on a sausage roll. This is from a Toronto Morning publication. This is they're even recognizing how bad it is. They just put out this: describe CBC in 3 words maximum. You can put in your words there if you want. 3 words max there. You can chuck it in there. But I'll show you some of the ones that people came up here. And we talk about the ISR on here. It is CBC all-seeing broadcaster where truth goes to die. Fair enough, eh? Fair enough.
Looks quite good, that, doesn't it? I'm guessing that's Grok that did that. Impressive.
A company using fake cream has to label it cream. That's like Little Caesar's Pizza, right? Like they got that real cheese, right? Fake cheese has to be labeled cheese. CBC should be able to have to label their content news. This next one here. There you go. News. Yeah. There you go. And this one here is probably more telling. This is more of an editorial cartoon. We put the loon in there. And then this is my thing from 1984. I've talked about this before. This is, I said, it seems like the people that are still enamored by the Liberals, and the polls go up. The more corruption that's uncovered, the more it goes up, and it seems like they're watching. And where's the girl in the red shorts and the hammer? Is that us? Who is it? Who's going to break through?
Maybe. Are we going to throw it at the screen?
Yeah, we hope so. We hope so. I mean, this is, we're doing the best we can with what we have. I'll say that. And this is our breakthrough years. And we think yesterday we broke a record. Today, a little bit lighter, I think, but we'll see how it turns out. Again, if you could share, like, subscribe this as many places as you can. Share it with your family and friends. People need to see this, and we need to hold the government accountable. It's your money. We've got to remember, it's your money. They're spending your money. They're taking it off your table. You work hard for it. And they have basically these spin rooms, and we're spending so much on consultants, like literally just blowing Canadian money and then sending it overseas. When do we start asking for aid? And the number one thing we need to do is get that Kuzma deal done. We need to get a trade deal. And America's not our enemy. America's not our enemy. People would rather go to Mexico, actually cartels fighting, than go to Florida because they think that their life would be in danger in Florida. It's absolutely, like, there's something wrong with them. Like, we'll give you, watch our show for a few days, and maybe that'll be enough counseling for you so that you can understand that you're living in a delusion.
It's an easy enemy, though, isn't it? And lots of countries around the world have found that. It's all there for you. Anti-Americanism is just like, it has one of the richest literatures of all the antis, of all the hatreds. And I just feel like, and also they're not going to they aren't going to kill you for it or anything. They're not going to really hurt you. So it's one of those hatreds that you can have, and there aren't any real consequences. It's like, whereas if you hate, I don't know, there are lots of, put it this way, there are lots of groups of people and individuals that you can hate and launch a campaign against, and they will make you suffer for it. like the Chinese Communist Party, for example. Like, look at how people need security if they critique the Chinese Communist Party. And listen to Sam Cooper talk about how he's been given warnings and things like that. But when you hit America, none of that happens. Nothing like that happens.
Thank you, Mistletoad. Much appreciated. You can help us by sharing this on your Facebook, sharing it on your X, sharing it everywhere. And if you go to the really big, can you put that in one more time? The reallybigshow.ca. If you go there, you can see all the other platforms are on. If you're on X, which I advise you, if you're not on X, I get an X account. And then you can find us on TikTok, X, and we're streaming on Rumble now too. We hardly have any followers there, but I'm sure we'll get some there. But this show has become very popular very quickly, and it's been exponential growth, and we appreciate that. And we especially appreciate the people that come here every day. And, like you see them here at the end here, Heidi, Ray, JCBBB, and all that, maybe too many B's there, Deborah, all these people that show up every day. We really appreciate that. And my 2 cents always there. Thank you. I haven't seen Global Traveler today. I haven't seen him in here. Might be traveling the world, right?
Licking his wounds.
There you go. Thank you. And I'm back. I'm back in about 20 minutes, 23 minutes with Renee Merrifield and Beyond the Ballot. And it's always a great discussion there. So maybe we'll dive into some of these issues that we didn't get enough time to kind of like dissect here. We did have a great guest on today, Kris Sims from the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. And we do have John Carpe on tomorrow from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. And we're starting to get a whole bunch of other ones. I got another got back from me. Food Professor's in. And I got another one, the publisher of the Winnipeg, I'm not going to get his Winnipeg Sun, I believe it is, Kevin. I won't say it because I don't want to get it wrong, but he's responded. He'll be coming on as well. So more guests, and we're going to get more MPs and MLAs, and we're going to try and hold people accountable, and some industry experts as well. Again, free Carpe tomorrow. There you go, free Carpe. Thank you for watching our show, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And if you want to come back, you can join me at noon with Renee Merrifield and Beyond the Ballot. That's like in 21 minutes now. Cheers.
Cheerio.